Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Talking About Saul with Dancing Sean. This is going to be our third part in the segment of this review. Last week we went over episode 1 and 2 of season 6. We're going to be talking about episode 3 and 4 of season 6. And at the very end, we're going to talk about predictions of what just aired, because they just aired episode 7. Sean, introduce yourself if people don't know who you are.
Hi, I'm Sean, Dancing Sean on YouTube and Twitter. Be happy for anyone to follow me there. I like to engage as much as I can, get opinions and advice and suggestions and feedback and such. I'm a huge fan of film in general, and lately I've shifted that appreciation to television. I think a lot more talent and effort is going into television than ever before, and there's great TV shows before anyway. And Better Call Saul is one of the best examples ever of film of any kind. I'm so excited to be watching it and talking about it, and maybe giving some people out there some perspective or insight, and hopefully maybe even get some feedback from people out there.
Awesome. All right.
Yes. Can I say real quick, Eric? I don't know how likely it is for someone to be keeping up with your stream, or if someone starts watching Better Call Saul later, for them to then jump in and start watching your coverage of what we've done so far. But I think the first one we covered like general background. We covered things like how they're using color in the show as for meaning, and we talked about like kind of a sort of a recap of the prior seasons leading up to where we are. And then that was the first one. Then the last one, we focused a little bit more on the first 2 episodes of this season. And because we're a few episodes behind, we kind of got into the most recent episode it aired, and we'll probably do that again here, right? We're going to focus on the next 2 in order, but then probably we're going to end up talking about what just happened on the most recent one, right?
Yes.
Cool.
So this is like off subject really fast, but I was watching Breaking Bad, the pilot episode, and I noticed that Walter has a degree that was like in 1985. And I was trying to debate on when season 1 starts in like real time, like in current time, because it's not 1985. That's just when he got his degree, or whatever. And that also brings to the point of, when is Better Call Saul in the timeline? Like, what year is it? I don't know if you know that.
I don't know exactly. I think I might have even known at one point, but I've forgotten, because I was like putting effort into trying to figure that out, and saw that other people had figured it out. There are definitely several details and clues in there that pin it down almost exactly. I think generally Better Call Saul is happening around 2004. Of course, it's spanning some time, and so it might be something like 2004 to 2007, or something like that. And I think Breaking Bad was happening somewhere around 2008. Again, it spans time, so it might be something like
that makes
2008
sense.
to 2011, something like that. But I think where we're at now in Better Call Saul is approximately 2 years before where Breaking Bad starts. Like maybe it's a year and a half or 3 years, but to give you an idea, it's a couple years about.
Okay. Yeah, I think Breaking Bad aired in 2008, so it makes sense that they're trying to keep it to that direct time.
It was probably airing around the same. It was probably meant to be current times as it was coming out.
I got like the feeling it was the 90s for some reason, or early 2000s, but that makes sense. It's maybe more the 2008 era.
Like, you can get a couple clues from general things like the use of cell phones. Like in Breaking Bad, most people had some kind of cell phone, but it was usually they still had flip phones. Does that make sense? They didn't have like smartphones. Like maybe one character did one time. But generally speaking, everyone had like phone. Whereas when you go to Better Call Saul, it's new for people to be having cell phones. No one's got any kind of iPhone. There's payphones still around, right? That's part of like the poster for the first season. Saul's on a payphone, which is almost non-existent, in modern times. But
that makes sense.
But there have been other clues too. There have been like dates on documents that they've shown, and like scheduled things that have been scheduled, like the years, the makes and models of cars. There's all kinds of little clues in there. And maybe even a couple times just directly stating the date a couple times too. But sorry, I don't exactly remember, but to give you an idea.
Yeah, that is good to know. Yeah, because I was kind of lost in the time. All right, so let's just dive into episode 3. So episode 3 mainly focuses on Nacho's story and conclusion, actually. But since it's like,
sorry.
yes,
I hate to cut you off, Eric, but I do, Flint. I hate to cut you off,
Uh,
but I do feel it's important to warn people that this is going to be full of
oh,
spoilers. We're going to talk
absolutely.
freely about the show. We're assuming that you have seen it. I say this every time. I think the show is good enough, great enough, that even if you happen to know a few plot details, how it's going to play out, it's still good, right? It's
Yep.
if you're watching Star Wars and you know that Darth Vader's Luke Skywalker's dad. Spoiler alert, by the way. I feel at this point everyone should probably know that. But also part of the point I'm making is it's still good. It doesn't matter if you know that.
Mhm.
It still makes Luke's growth and Han's, charisma and R2's silliness, all those parts of the special effects, especially for the time.
Mhm.
It's all still great about Star Wars, even if you know some detail of how the plot's going to go, right? Same
Also,
thing in Better Call Saul,
Mhm.
even if you know, this character's going to die or this character is still, I mean, in fact, it's kind of unique because Better Call Saul is a prequel to Breaking Bad.
Mhm.
We definitely know a lot of things. A lot of things are sort of spoiled for us.
Yep.
And yet, we're still riveted to see how it got to that point. There's
Mhm.
still characters that weren't in Breaking Bad that were wondering how things are going, on and on. Anyway, I still feel the need to warn you that we're gonna, this episode especially, be chock full of spoilers. So be
Yes.
warned.
Um. So, like I said, this episode more focuses on Nacho Vargas. But before we go into that part of the episode, I want to go into the smaller part of Saul and Kim. Just because they don't have that much in this episode, so might as well talk about them while then we will go into the details of Nacho's journey. So Saul and Kim in this episode are planning something that involves Howard. Like they're trying to mess with him, or there's like some greater plan that they have. But this episode kind of shows a little bit of their next plan. Actually, I didn't know this until I rewatched it, but Saul has like a painting on his wall and he takes it down. It's like some colorful painting, and right behind it is the plans. And we see these plans, obviously, like the sticky notes, throughout the later episodes. But I thought that was the first time they shown it was like in episode 5 or 6, when I didn't even realize they showed it immediately, like in episode 2. So you can kind of start getting an idea of what are they planning, and look at the little sticky notes if you like analyzed it.
Seeds were planted. They were already giving us clues to figure out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I'll say something I've been thinking about this season is it's almost like a heist. The way this a big portion, because there's a lot of different storylines interweaving and playing out, but the Saul, Kim, Howard centerpiece
Mm-hmm.
is sort of like a mystery or a heist that's coming together, that we're being fed little bits at a time to try to figure out where it's going.
Right.
I think a little unique is within the seasons of Better Call Saul. I think it's a little bit unique, and it's a little unique within TV in general.
Mm-hmm. And they like make it fun. It's not like completely serious, even though it is a serious thing that it will lead up to. But like they kind of have, I feel like they have fun with it. What they're doing with Kim and Saul, because they're having fun for one. To a degree, like I feel like Kim is like embracing this like 100%. Saul may be like weary about it, but he still, is embracing what's going on with this scheme that they're doing. I know in the clothing they're wearing is, Saul has like a red tie and a red striped dress shirt. Which we talked about the symbolism of red. Oh, hey streamer, how's it going? This is the first time I've ever seen VTuber journalism. Yes, never seen it. Oh, nice. Yes.
It's especially if someone just joined the chat, I'll take, if you don't mind, just a quick moment to point out how incredibly important the use of color is on this show. And that, we went into it in more depth in the first episode when we were talking about the show in general. But just a refresher that they use color pervasively and consistently to convey characters' intentions. They can use it for foreshadowing. They can get tension out of it, and you'll see there's a pattern through the course of it that they use. There's other little bits to it, but generally speaking, blue colors are used to convey positive, legal, good protagonist
Mm-hmm.
characters and actions. Red colors are used to convey criminal, immoral, negative, antagonistic characters and actions. From the clothes they wear, the cars they drive, paintings on the wall. It's like it's
Everywhere.
constantly pieces of the story that they're telling are coming from the colors. And so Jimmy, whose character is usually kind of conflicted, he seems on, usually mostly to
Mm-hmm.
be basically a good guy. So that might have him in the blue range.
Yeah.
But he definitely breaks the law left and right. Like,
Yeah.
oftentimes he's breaking the law because he's trying to do the right thing and the red tape's getting in his way. But sometimes it's just because he's greedy or he's trying to get revenge on someone or whatever it is. And so, he often will have like a blue jacket and a red tie or maybe
Yep.
a pink shirt. He's like, he'll swing, and the car yellow, by the way, I feel is somewhere, it represents something along the lines of uncertainty or transition. He drives a yellow car with a red door. You see it constantly all over the place. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think we're going to see a lot of Saul when he is, on one hand, a sort of protagonist, right? We're kind of rooting for him, um, and but he also is doing something kind of shady. He's trying to get at Howard, and so
Yeah.
we see Howard is constantly in blue. We know Howard is the good guy in this situation.
Yeah.
And Saul's like sometimes blue, sometimes red, sometimes blue jacket, red tie.
Mm-hmm.
Kim, who has always been solid and blue,
Mm-hmm.
almost 100% until this season.
Mm-hmm.
Now that she's doing the shady stuff, she's starting to wear maroons and oranges, some more warm colors. So
yeah, she's wearing
anyway,
actually a dark suit, like a black suit, I think, in this episode.
yeah, even if
Yeah.
it's blue, they made it so dark it's hard to tell. It's
Yes,
not
I was wondering
clearly
that.
blue
Yeah.
like Kim always is in the past. So.
Well, Howard, I think he's wearing a black suit. I was trying to think if he's going to his therapist. We're going to get into this later, but I think he's wearing either a really dark blue or a black suit. I was trying to figure that one out. We more convey him to being, wearing blue, the good guy, or doing the good thing. So I was trying to figure out why would they make him wear a black suit if that was actually a black suit. But maybe he's conflicting because he has mental issues, kind of.
I think it was dark blue.
Okay, I'm assuming too. Yeah.
Yeah. And also it's
He is
worth
a good
noting
boss.
that sometimes they will use some more neutral or subtle or ambiguous colors like gray or beige or brown. Like Mike wears a lot of brown, dark black, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when they do that, sometimes it's just like the nature of what's going on. Like at Chuck's funeral, they wore black. You know what I mean? So that makes sense, right? But and sometimes I think maybe it's a character who isn't clearly being good or bad in a certain situation.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe sometimes I wonder if they're trying to hide from us exactly
That's
what
true.
a character's intention or role are. But I think in this scenario, he's in a dark room with a psychologist, so it's harder to see, especially if it's a dark blue suit. Two, that maybe they aren't. Maybe on some level they're trying to convey that Howard's in a dark place, and so he's not wearing a
Yes,
brighter
I
blue,
thought
it's a
about
darker
that.
blue.
Yeah.
But I still am confident he's in a good guy role. There's
Yes.
no red at all. So.
No. So the first scene that they opened up was, like I said, the painting. You could see this like sticky note plan. And the next scene is with Kim, and Kim is meeting the ADA Suzanne. And Suzanne basically confronts Kim that Lalo is alive. Well, let me phrase that. They're looking into Lalo. I don't think they know he's alive or dead. Am I correct on that?
I don't think so.
Yeah. But she's an ADA. She's dealing with ADA is like dealing with drugs, right?
I believe ADA's assistant district attorney.
That's right. You're right. You said this before. That's I think a different term. The drug. Anyways, but Suzanne thinks that Saul has to make a choice. Will he be a rat, to the cartels, or will and side with the ADA, because he could like get out of the situation he is in, or will he side with, I mean, obviously it's easier said than done. You can't like just get out of that.
Can he get out of the
Yeah.
situation?
But she thinks she tried to paint this like
Right.
colorful, a very good debate about he could get out of this, just come to us, but he has to make a choice.
The situation is that, and we see this play out more through the episode, is that Saul represented someone that the law thought was named a Guzman, and
which is Lalo.
We know it's really Lalo, and when they realized, that they had a $7 million bail for him, and somehow he came up with it, and Saul showed up with $7 million cash, and like on one level, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, especially as far as the law goes.
Yeah.
However, people involved in the law, they know it means something, right? It might not be evidence they can use in court, but they still have a lot of experience and know it's a clue towards something they've probably seen before, which is that sometimes someone gets in over their head. Sometimes a lawyer representing a drug dealer or some, especially some high level cartel guy dealing with millions of dollars and murders involved. Sometimes that lawyer didn't decide, I want to be a bad guy. Let me find some terrible murder criminal to work for.
Exactly.
Sometimes they got forced into the situation,
Mm-hmm.
which is almost exactly what's happened to Saul.
Yes.
To be fair, Saul didn't exactly get forced into it. Remember when he went to see Lalo at first?
Huh?
He was kind of hesitant. He wasn't sure he wanted to do it, but he maybe he didn't have a choice. It's not clear. But Saul did say, well, my price has gone up. Saul used it as an angle to get more money.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
and it's also like he didn't know who
forced into it, but he was getting as much out of it as he could have.
He also didn't know how dangerous Lalo was. Like he knew he was dangerous, or he could be dangerous. Just because it's the drug cartel. He's not stupid, but didn't realize this guy is insanely dangerous. So
one way or the other, Suzanne and the rest of the people working in the courts, Saul lives in that courthouse. He's a lawyer. He's going to trial. He works with the court clerk and his district attorney. He's like part of this little community, if you will, right? And Suzanne and other people in his community realized that Saul was representing a guy that had a fake identity and put up millions of dollars, and they're suddenly suspicious of Saul.
Yeah.
And Suzanne kind of realizes some combination of Saul might not have meant to get mixed up in this, and whether he did or not, she's throwing him a bone. Here's an out. Look, we will say that your client privilege, your lawyer client privilege doesn't apply if you were forced into this situation, and so you can give us information about them, and so you won't be implicated in the bad things they do. We can help track these bad guys down, and that is all nice, but Kim knows who Lalo really is, and they will hunt Saul down and kill him, and maybe her too.
Exactly.
It's like a reasonable offer Suzanne's making, but Kim's on one level is like, this isn't going to work. But also, Kim is on this new path to screw over Howard.
Yep.
If Saul starts getting mixed up with the DA and his drug cartel, it's going to ruin her whole plan.
Yeah.
So she's like, no, we're not doing this, Suzanne.
Also, this is prior, like when Kim goes up to Suzanne and gives paperwork to Suzanne, what was that? Do you know? I assume it had something to do with the scheme, but I actually didn't know. Like, was it just she was just being a good Samaritan to lawyers?
Yeah, that was just a different case that Kim had. Kim was just representing some of the clients.
Okay.
And one thing...
Okay.
Here's one thing that's usually not conveyed in shows about the legal system. There are no surprises in court. Like, a lot of times you see in this court case where someone's like... And then blah blah blah. No, here's the evidence. This like surprise. That never happens. Everyone knows everything ahead of time. Each lawyer is obliged to give all their evidence, all their case, all their witnesses to the other side. Everything they say up there, the other side already knows everything they're going to say.
Right.
Every piece of evidence, every witness they call, everything is already known. They're just putting on a show for the jury.
Right. Yes.
And so part of that's what Kim was doing. Kim had evidence about one of her clients. Evidence that actually made her client look bad, but she's still obliged to turn it over to the other side. And Suzanne was saying like, Wait, you found something from 6 years ago in another state about your client? We never would have found this. Why are you bothering to give it to me? Kim's like, it's my job. I'm just doing the right thing. That's what I'm supposed to do, right?
Which is
I don't even
ironic
care if
because
this evidence doesn't
she's
look good. I still think I'm going to win my case. That's how confident and legal she's being about it all.
Yeah, because she is like, on one hand, is doing, like helping the small people. And then on the other hand, she's like screwing over Howard, which is, yeah.
Some of these unusual behaviors by Kim, I think, become a little more understandable over the next couple episodes, especially when we see that flashback to her youth.
Yes.
I won't get into it now. We'll stick to this episode. But even though on some level it doesn't make sense, when you put the whole picture together, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So that scene happens, and then you get a scene with, let's see, how do you pronounce his name? Huel? Huel. I knew I said that wrong. And Huel's hired by Saul to basically make a copy of Howard's keys, and they do it through a fun little segment of Howard goes to a place, gives his keys to a vignette. I think they call that, right? Ballet. I knew I said that wrong too. And Huel has a certain amount of time to steal the keys from that valet, you said?
Valet.
Okay.
It's a French word. I think it's spelled V-A-L-E-T.
That's why it throws me off.
But
yeah.
Valet.
Okay.
French has a lot of silent letters,
weird.
especially T's at the end of the word. So
but yeah, he steals the keys from the valet by bumping into him. Gets the keys copied by someone who's in like a parking lot, and then drops the keys on the floor. So it looks like the valet dropped it. So very inconspicuous. So the whole scene was supposed to be. But yeah, it's a fun little scene. I think they had like some like classical music on while they were doing the scene. But it's pretty straightforward, that scene.
One thing the show does in general that I love is they have interesting presentations for I don't know, scenes, the things that they want to show us, things that are going to occur in the plot, things that might be part of a bigger picture or a clue. They make little short films out of them. You know what I mean? They have like unique camera angles and unique music going along with it. And a lot of times for the first portion of it, you're not even sure what's happening. And by the end, you're like, oh, I see. Yeah, they're great filmmakers. You know what I mean?
They really are.
It's not just the regular TV show. That's part of why the show is so good, is that they take every opportunity they can to do something special and unique. Every scene that's in there has great care put into it, and it has very specific meaning in the big story.
Mm-hmm. I think one of my favorite scenes that are like short stories is, I think it's in season 2 or 3, a time montage where Saul is, I think the whole scene point of it was he was trying to get fired from Cliff's branch, and they just had like these scenes of different types of Saul, and one of those blow up car balloon things. I'm not sure if you remember the scene or the segment.
Car balloon?
It's like one of those, like, it looks like a person that's like getting blown by. It's like
a blow up doll.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that scene was just so awesomely presented. It's such a simple little thing, but they, like you said, they make things so interesting and how they film it. They're like, how could we take this pretty much a boring scene and make it a masterful scene?
Yeah, they make it unique, memorable.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, I still remember that till now. It's one of my favorite moments of Better Call Saul, a tight scene. But anyways, so Huel gives the keys to Saul, and they have like a moment together where Huel's like, "Why are you doing this?" And Saul comes up with like, "Oh, what did he say? Did I write down what he says?" All right. He kind of like, this is for the better good. Everyone will benefit from this, which is obviously bullshit because Howard's not going to benefit from this.
Well, Howard's not, but on some level, Saul thinks that everyone will.
That is true.
Yeah. It was interesting. Huel's like, you're a lawyer, right? Lawyers make money, right? Like, you got a car and a wife and a home and you got a job. Like, why are you messing around with this, and part of the answer, the real answer, is it's all likes this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He just likes to, work the system. He likes to outwit people or whatever,
Yeah.
and Howard, he's got reasons to go after Howard. They've, maybe not good legitimate reasons, maybe not for as far as he's going, but in his mind he's got like this beef with Howard.
Yes.
But also remember, they stand to gain, well over $1 million, and the plan is for Kim to not have to work at a big law firm for,
Mm-hmm.
rich white successful companies. She can do pro bono work for, poor average people getting screwed over by the system.
Yeah.
And so now also Saul and Kim get to buy a nice house and live a nice lifestyle. Never mind that factor. They could, live worse lives and, get work, second job. There are other ways they could still do this pro bono work
Yeah.
without screwing over Howard. But that's how Saul is justifying it. That's what he tells Huel.
Yes. Um, and then they have let's see. Then they go home. Well, basically, Saul and Kim go home, and they let's see. Oh, she tells Jimmy about Lalo. What's going on with Lalo? Oh no, Lalo is dead. They did mention that because I say in my notes that Kim tells Saul that Lalo is dead, and this is the first time they actually know that he died. So the ADA must have told Kim that.
No, I think they already knew because Mike told Saul. Mike told Saul.
See, that's what I thought. But this is like a first surprise. Like this scene, Kim does tell Saul that Lalo's dead, and Saul's like, "Oh, okay." So I thought so too until I saw the scene, and I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, I might be misremembering something, but maybe this is like confirmation. Maybe Mike told Saul that Saul was gonna be killed.
Oh,
So he's
yes.
relieved by that, but now maybe they get confirmation.
Yeah,
Does that make
yeah.
sense?
But I think the ADA does know that he died because, like I said, Kim wouldn't have gotten that information anywhere else other than Suzanne.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Quite remember,
Yeah,
but that makes sense. Yeah.
And she asked him, what she wants. Basically, does he want to be a rat or not? And what I like about Saul and Kim's relationship is they really work together as a team. Like partner. He asked her, "What do you think I should do?" Like he wants to do the best for just not him but her too. It seems like. And
yeah, I think he does intend to want to make her happy, but sometimes he gets caught up in himself. Like there have been several times, like there was a point when he didn't have his. Maybe it was right after he got his license back. I think right after he got his license back. It had been suspended because of the whole thing with Chuck, and he got it back. And when he had the license suspended, he just got a job selling cell phones. The same sort of hustle he has to con people over that he uses as a lawyer, he also used as a salesman selling these cell phones. But now he has his license back, but he sells all these cell phones. Like he ordered a bunch of extra because he was selling so many, he was so good at it. So he has this idea now to use the cell phones. This is back in season 4-ish, I think. He has the idea to use these cell phones as like a promo for his business. He's going to give them out to people and say, here's a free phone. Call me if you get in legal trouble. And of course, he's targeting people he expects to get in legal trouble. Like drug dealers, gang members, prostitutes, or whatever. And so, and at first he wants to like give a 50% discount. He's all excited about this. He's just getting his business going. And Kim's like 50% discount. She's on multiple levels. She's worried about this. One, I think she's big picture kind of worried about the direction Jimmy's going. She wants him to do something more stable, respectable, or whatever. Whereas he's getting mixed up in like dirty criminals. But she doesn't say that. She says something more to the effect of, and this is also a legitimate concern. She says, aren't you maybe encouraging people to commit crimes by offering criminals really cheap, legal services? Are you kind of encouraging him? He's like, no, look, they're going to get in trouble anyway. Trust me. I know these people. But anyway, he promises her. He's like, you know what though? You're right. I get carried away. I'm going too far. 50%'s too much off. That makes me look cheap. But then when he goes out and he's selling the phones,
Mhm.
he's like 50% off. He gets so caught up in a moment. He does it anyway, you know.
That's
And I think
true.
that happens a lot. You
It
know,
does.
that's one of the best examples. Um, but I think that, and I think it might have been, if he said it before, he might say it again here. But it's the same idea that you're
Yes.
talking about. That
Yeah, yeah.
Kim reels him in sometimes from his wildness, you know.
Yeah. And a nice thing that, Better Call Saul does too is they don't sometimes conclude a conversation. Like, you actually don't know if he's going to be a rat or not. You assume especially in the future, that he's not going to be a rat, but they still make you question it. They cut the scene off after she asks him a question and he thinks about it. Like, what direction are you going to do?
I think the implication was he was not. I don't think that they were leaving that particularly ambiguous. I mean, I guess I can see how it's possible that it could go the other way, but
Yeah.
I think that they presented that in a way that we're supposed to assume he's not going to do it. And in fact, not just that he's not going to do it, but that Kim doesn't want him to do it. Kim could have said, "Do you want to be an informant?" But instead, she said, "Do you want to be a rat?" She presented it in a way that made Jimmy not want to do it. That made Jimmy think that she didn't want him to do it.
Mhm.
And so I think, based on that, it was clear he wasn't going to do it.
Right. And that pretty much ends the Saul and Kim segment of this episode. So we're going to dive into Nacho Vargas's, segment, which the last episode. Actually, before this, I want to get into, like, in episode 2, there was something that really cool happened. This is with Gus and technically Cliff. So I didn't, like I said, rewatching it is always fun because you can catch like little things. Cliff gets has to deal with the Kettlemans. And after he's done dealing with the Kettlemans, he goes up to his office, and the camera's turned on his back. So you like see his glasses from his back head, and the background is he's just looking at out his window, and it's clear. It's like a nice blue, sky. Then it transitions literally to Gus in the same exact position with glasses, but the background is red. I thought that was awesome. Like, I didn't even that just went by me the first time, and I was like,
me too. I didn't catch that till you just now said that.
Yeah.
So it's enough to make me want to go watch it again. But it's a perfect demonstration of what I'm saying about how they use color. Yeah.
And then they unblur what the background is, because it's red, and it's Hector. Hector's in the back. Just so cool. It's such a nice cinematic thing to do that I don't know. I can appreciate that a lot. So, anyways, we're gonna dive in.
It's like this fourth dimension that the show is taking advantage of that most film doesn't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They have this whole new, like usually a director, a filmmaker, or whatever. They have the lighting, and they have the editing. They have sound. They have these certain tools to work with. And it's like Better Call Saul is like, hey, you have color to work with too, right? Like, we're really going to use the heck out of color. So
yes,
it's great.
So we open up with Nacho. So last episode, he was running away from, I call them the Salamanca twins, in a red truck. In this episode, they continue that. His tire was shot out. He has to eventually park his car. He did get away from them, at least for now. But he is in the desert, and his car breaks down, and he has to find a way to hide. And he finds this abandoned oil truck, it looked like, and he goes inside and hides in there and hides in the oil, and they pretty much they can't find him. The Salamancas are, and the men that are with them. So they have like a segment with that. I was sitting there thinking, I was like, can you actually hold your breath that long? He holds it for a minute, by the way. I counted it. And you probably can. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. John, you're muted.
Sorry. You could definitely. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
You could definitely hold your breath. Well, maybe not like every person, but
Yeah,
generally
yeah.
speaking, if you're in decent health, which Nacho is in great health, you can
Yes,
hold your breath
yes.
for a minute. Like at the last of the minute, you might be struggling a little bit.
Yeah, which they did. They had
And
little bubbles.
also, there's a difference between like. So just so you know, I
Yeah.
thought about this a little bit too, and this is one of my lesser scenes. Like of all the show, this is on a lower end
Mhm.
because I did feel like this scene was a little unrealistic. There's a couple pieces of it that kind of irked me.
Yeah.
It's not enough to like ruin it, and it added some good tension,
Yes. Yeah.
But while in the same, no pun intended, but in the same breath that I'm saying you can hold your breath for a minute, towards the end of that breath.
Mm.
Okay, so here's one when you think about holding your breath.
Mhm.
If you just like breathe in, take a deep breath, and just hold it. Like how long can you hold that?
Yeah.
Versus how long before you breathe in again. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? So if you're underwater, the amount of time that you can hold that breath without breathing out is different from the amount of time that you need to breathe in again.
Right.
Right? So if I could like hold this without breathing out for 40 seconds or a minute or whatever it is, but if I'm underwater, I can still go and I'm still underwater. I can still go a few more seconds before I breathe in.
Yeah.
But so if Nacho under that oil breathes out any,
Mm.
it makes little bubbles that would be seen.
Yep.
That makes sense, and it would give him away. So he can't breathe out any. He has to keep it held in completely.
Yes.
On top of that, when the minute goes by and a person passes by and it comes up, if you push your limits holding your breath, usually when you finally
Yep.
you're gonna go like that. He can't do that. He can't make any noise. So it seemed to me like unnecessarily risky for him to hide in that oil, because if he can't hold the breath, he's so caught.
Mhm.
He has to know exactly when they get there and when they leave. How well can he
Exactly.
hear? What happens if he breathes? What if the guy waited a little bit longer? Also, I'm a little suspicious that the guy wouldn't notice that he went into the oil, because that tanker was sitting out in the middle of a field in a kind of a desertous landscape.
Mm.
I can't believe there wasn't a film of dust across the top that he would have disrupted by getting into it.
Yep.
It's such an obvious place for him to be hiding. It's just this big tanker in the middle of the field. Like they're definitely going to go. It seems like it would have been smarter for him to just run deeper into the woods.
Yeah.
Once he jumps in it, now he's covered in oil, which makes it easier for him to be tracked as he leaves oil around. Like there's so many parts of that really didn't add up to me.
Yeah.
I was a little frustrated, but I feel like I'm being a little nitpicky.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like
I thought about it too.
can't even think of another thing to be negative about. So, and maybe it was worth it for the uniqueness of that shot, for the suspense of the moment.
Yeah. Because there's no dialogue, obviously, really. So, but yeah, I thought the same. I mean, at least they went to the detail. Like, I was like, if he breathed in those fumes, would he be sick? And he was in there for a while. He throws up after. So at least they did that effort,
Yeah,
But honestly, I was like, I felt like I would have been dead if I went into that thing in the first place. But anyway, so they have that whole scene, and eventually Nacho gets to a building, and he's like hosing himself off, and a man by the name of Samaritano, which I don't know if that means Samaritan in Spanish, but that's his name. Which
if it doesn't mean that, it sure sounds like it. Right?
Yep. I feel like that may have been implied. But he was a good Samaritan. He allowed him to wash himself. He gave him a bar of soap and a rag, and he needed to use the phone, Nacho, and he allowed him to do that for free, even when Nacho was going to give him money. Now, Nacho ended up giving him money no matter what, but the guy was just being a good Samaritan. I actually somewhat feel for people who are a realistic person, if that makes any sense. Like, if that person had died, I would feel bad. So, but you get this, like, the scene where they left off of in episode 2, where Gus and Mike were having like this conflict, and Tyrese like pulls a gun on Mike, and Nacho calls him. That's the scene. Like, this is the other side of it. He calls his dad first.
In the last episode we did, I kept getting this mixed up with another scene. And it's because we see the same scene from two different perspectives,
Yes.
2 different episodes, and I kept getting mixed up about which one was happening in which part. But yeah, this was after he called his dad, though, right?
Yeah. He calls his dad first because obviously he
That
needs
was
to
one
know
of my favorite scenes of the whole show.
Oh yes. Yeah, and the acting's so good because like he's so. His emotions pretty much to say everything, Nachos.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like,
it was so tough to watch. Like you can tell how sad and even scared he is.
Yes.
But he's trying to stay strong. He doesn't want his dad to know. You know what I mean?
Like when you I feel like the idea of dads is like they're your protectors, and he wanted his dad to protect him, but he couldn't. Like he can't get him involved in this. And I kind of got that feeling a little bit. I don't know why. That was just me, maybe interpretation, but so you bring that up a little bit, that he felt scared and knew what to do, but didn't, like it was going to get very difficult from here. He knew.
Remember from the past, Nacho's dad is kind of aware that Nacho's mixed up in some kind of drug business. He understands that Nacho has too much money. And at one point when Gus started, at one point Hector wanted to use Nacho's dad to smuggle drugs. Nacho's dad works in like a car shop,
Yeah.
And so Hector was like inspired by Gus, like, oh, he's using his chicken business to move drugs around. Hey, Nacho, we could use your dad's car business to move drugs around. Nacho's like, no, he's not part of the game. Don't do this. And Hector's pushing for it, and that's what drove Nacho to try to poison him with the pills. That whole scenario. That's why how Hector ended up in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
So then the follow-up to that is now Gus tries to use Nacho's dad against him to be a double agent for the Salamancas, or against the Salamancas for him,
Yeah.
And that's really what's been driving Nacho, is to protect his dad.
Yes.
And at one point he tried to have his dad bought out, to have his business bought out. He knew that he couldn't do it, so he tried to get one of his buddies. He's got all those drug money. He gives it to his buddy. I don't think we saw this. We saw it's like it happened off screen. We pieced together what's going on. That he gives his buddy money to go try to buy the garage from his dad.
Yeah.
But the dad sees through it. He comes to talk to Nacho. I can't remember if I brought the scene up before, but in the scene at Nacho's house, when they sit down across the table behind Nacho's dad is a big blue painting. So when the camera's on him, he's shrouded in blue. But when it cuts the other side to Nacho, behind him in the distance, looming above him, is a red painting.
Yeah.
Nacho's not in red because he's trying to be a good guy, but he still has the red like hovering around him. You know what I mean? And his dad's like, I know what you're doing. I'm not leaving. You just need to go to the police. And kind of like the scene with Kim and Suzanne, Nacho's dad just doesn't get it. I can't just go to the police. It's not that simple. You don't understand how big this operation is, how deep into it I am. Not only will I be killed, you'll be killed, Dad. And he doesn't want to put that fear in his dad. His dad won't even accept it or understand it anyway. So that's why that's what this phone call he now makes in Mexico when he's trying to outrun the Salamancas, and Nacho, or Gus and Mike are trying to figure out how to do all this. That's still what's driving Nacho. He's trying to protect his dad.
Yeah.
And in that scene when Nacho calls his dad, notice how, generally speaking, the aesthetic, the background, and what Nacho's dad is wearing, everything, it's all kind of black and white.
Yep.
That's how Nacho's dad sees things. It's just black and white. It's simple. Just go to the police. He doesn't understand how nuanced it is, how much gray area there is, how much trouble's involved with it all. He just has this very simple-minded, right and wrong attitude.
Yeah.
And that's almost the point of this show, is to demonstrate how it's not always that simple. People aren't just good or bad. There's areas in between. They grow and they make mistakes and they get caught up in things that force them into things they don't want to do, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, part of the reason I thought that scene was so good is how well they represented that concept through the colors.
Yeah.
But also the emotions that Nacho had and everything that we know is going through his mind that he's trying to keep together on the phone with his dad.
Yeah.
It was, and you kind of realize in that moment, Nacho's accepting that he's gonna die.
Yes.
There's not any way around it. You know what I mean? And this is just his way to say goodbye to his dad. And it was so sad. It was, to me, it was like a million times better than some shootout or some car chase or whatever else.
Right. So then we get the other side of that is, he calls Mike, and he pretty much says, you can do whatever you want to me as long as my dad's safe, as long as he's protected. And of course, he wants Gus to know this, but he wants Mike to keep his word, basically,
He doesn't trust Gus.
Yeah.
Gus is like, sure, yeah, we'll protect your dad. All right, go have his dad killed.
Exactly.
What I mean? But he knows Mike will be a man of his word and live up to this promise.
So after that, they do find him. They transport Nacho in some type of semi truck, in some secret compartment, which was pretty cool. And he has his last dinner, which is, if you...
Real quick, Eric.
Yes.
Flint, sorry, I want to point out, Flint, that that was another use of color. Doesn't come up very often, but when they took the panels off that truck and Nacho was hidden inside, green panels.
Oh.
Green represents...
He was protected.
Something along the lines of like a cover, a facade, protection, that realm, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we saw that same truck in the past. We saw them open it up and pull drugs out. So that's when that was an earlier season, but it's when I was starting to piece together what green meant.
Was that an earlier season, or was that in Breaking Bad?
It might have been in Breaking Bad too, but I'm almost positive it happened in an earlier season in this show.
I remember.
I wish I could tell you the episode and the season or whatever I can, but I'm almost positive. But because it may have also been a Breaking Bad, but I just remember at that time thinking that green might mean money or greed or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
But there's all kinds of other scenarios where money or greed are being portrayed and green isn't present. But almost every time someone is in some way being hidden or covered in some fashion, it's almost always in green. Like in there was a prior scene mirrored one that's coming up in this episode where Nacho and a group of people are in a distance and Mike is up on a hill with a gun covering them.
Yes.
Yep. It's a green gun. He's got a green gun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Remember when Nacho was going after Daniel, the guy that had like the baseball collection and he worked for the pharmaceutical company, pills or whatever. Mike was trying to like protect Daniel from Nacho in that scenario. He had a green jacket on. Vet's office, and a couple episodes ago they went to, it was green. I just want to point out, it's just another example. There aren't many uses of green in the show, so I want to point them out when they come up. They almost always represent some sort of someone being protected or covered, or it's like a facade. A facade can kind of symbolically mean, a cover. It literally means like a cover or front, but that also kind of symbolically can mean something being hidden or protected. So anyway, just another example of it.
That's awesome. So it's kind of like how if you get sentenced to death by the law, you have your last meal. They kind of did that, like Nacho has a meal with Mike there, and pretty much just goes over what the heck, what's going to happen, with them. And it's kind of sad because you're just like you just know in your head at this point that Nacho's going to die. Like maybe he'll get out of it, but he's probably just going to die. But what's more tragic?
The viewer wasn't expecting it. I think we all think he's going to find some way out of this. Mike's going to save him. Something's going to happen. There's no way he dies, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is why I like the show so much. Is if you do in the situation like this, Vargas should die. Like, how is he going to get out of this? How is he going to come? He's too wrapped up in the Salamancas and Gus's issue that I feel like, I guess it would be a miracle, but that's what sometimes shows do, and you're like, I guess. But in my head, I just felt like it's just impossible. Like, you just have to accept this. And they're also like foreshadowing it with like the last dinner. It's a small thing, but it's still, that means that you're dead. After this.
Yeah. It's the thing is that people are rooting for him somehow to get out of this. They're not realizing the whole point of this is to save his dad. If somehow he got out of this, and his dad's gonna get killed.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
there's nothing he can do in this moment. There's things he can do in this moment to save himself from death, but it's gonna mean his dad's life, and he's already decided to sacrifice himself for his dad.
I mean, I guess I didn't even think about it. I guess if his dad had died, like we see his dad die, and he finds this out, that may have changed things.
That would change things.
But that's not the case. No, yeah. So, let's see. Sorry. So they basically have, like I said, the Last Supper for him. And Nacho's supposed to be. Oh, and he's supposed to get beat up. Like he needs to look like he's not working with Gus. Like Gus has actually found him, tried to get information from him, and then hand him over to the Salamancas.
Yeah, if they want to sell this scenario to the Salamancas, because here again, to kind of like capture the big picture, Hector and the Salamancas have this beef against Gus, and Gus has a beef against them too. To be fair, they have a beef with each other. Okay, and Gus was using Nacho to spy on the Salamancas,
right?
But if this is discovered, it's going to mean a war, and the Gus doesn't want a war. Hector and Salamancas don't seem to care. They seem to be ready to go. But the higher ups, Eladio and Bolsa, the people who are making hundreds of millions of dollars from all this drug transactions, they want to maintain stability and peace. And so Gus wants to be able to pitch this story that Nacho was working for some other entity, and look, we caught him. And they planted evidence in Nacho's safe of money transactions from Peru. They've got Nacho to agree to admit to, having done it on his own and not for Gus, so that it will protect his dad, But if they want, part of pitching all this, part of getting the Salamancas to believe this is Nacho needs to look roughed up. There's no way Nacho can't show up looking squeaky clean. They're not going to believe it, right? So
exactly.
Mike said, well, if someone's going to beat him up, I'll be the one to do it. He gives Nacho a drink.
Right.
Liquor or whatever.
And Gus goes over there, make sure that, things are going smooth. Mike confronts him, is like, I need to be at the actual scene. I need to make sure, kind of like, this is the scene that you're talking about, that he has a green gun. But basically Mike is like, if you want it to basically go smooth, I need to be there to make sure that basically Nacho dies if something weird happens, or something is out of control.
There's a lot of variables. He just wants to be a backup plan. He
exactly.
Just wants to be covering the situation secretly from a distance.
Yeah.
There's a couple of the things I want to point out.
Yeah.
Kind of connected from this scene where Mike and Nacho had their sort of last dinner, and also from the very opening scene of the episode. We didn't talk about that.
Not yet, because I was going to bring that up a little bit later.
Want to wait for it? Okay.
Yeah, because we're going to.
But it is important to remember that Gus got out some alcohol and glasses for them to drink.
Yes.
And there was even a scene that I was completely perplexed by. I literally didn't even understand what visually was happening on the screen. I figured it out eventually, but there was that kind of disjointed, blurry picture of Nacho from below. Do you remember that?
Are you talking about where he's looking at himself in the water?
And the glass, and a reflection of the liquid in the glass. Yes. I didn't understand what that was. I eventually pieced it together.
Now I get, I actually didn't catch that until you just pointed that out now, because I was trying to figure out where did that glass come from. So
there you go.
Nacho, Gus takes Nacho to an abandoned desert place, in the middle of nowhere, obviously, because that's a great place to kill somebody. No one's going to see. And hands him over to the Salamancas, and Balza, grabs him, or I think doesn't grab, but like confronts Nacho and asks him, what happened. And that's the point that Nacho has to tell the story. He has to. If he doesn't, his dad's dead.
Before we go into this real quick, I want to point out, Flint, that this same spot they go to kill Nacho, they've been at this spot before.
I thought so. I just didn't know where.
It would maybe even multiple times, but there was definitely a time. This is we're we're getting deep into this, so I'm sorry if it's too much of a tangent, but I do like to point out how things connect through the seasons and the episodes. There was a scene early on. It was after it because Mike. I wish I could remember quite how it started, but Mike has this confrontation with Tuco, if I remember right. Mike and Tuco get into it. I can't exactly remember how they got into conflict with each other.
Wait, would this be in Breaking Bad?
No. It was I think around season 2 of.
I thought Tuco got arrested in season 1.
Tuco was in season 1, but he ends up getting arrested and going to jail.
Okay.
And it was partly because of Mike.
Okay.
Mike and Tuco got in a fight. If I remember right, Mike kind of knew that they were going to get in this fight. Tuco was probably going to beat his ass, but that Tuco was going to get in trouble with law and go to jail. And that was kind of like Mike's angle.
Right.
And in the fallout from this, he's still frustrated with the Salamancas, and he gets one of their trucks. He puts spikes out, he figures out the route that their trucks are traveling. He puts spikes out.
Oh, this sounds familiar. Yeah.
Tires blow. He gets the driver out of the truck, ties him up, cuts the tires open. There's a bunch of money in there.
Right.
Later, he meets with Nacho because Nacho pieces together that Mike did this. Nacho's like, who could know that was our truck? How did they find the money? And whoever did this, why didn't they kill the driver? It was you. You don't have it in you to kill this innocent guy, but you would. Why'd you? And so he has this confrontation.
Yeah.
The truck driver, a lot of this is kind of happening off screen, and we're kind of piecing it together.
Yeah.
But that guy might have been completely innocent. We don't know for sure, but he might have just been driving a truck. He doesn't know that they're smuggling drugs or money in it. He's just a truck driver. But also, if you remember, a Good Samaritan stopped on the side of the road because Mike's goal was not to get that money. Mike's goal was to get the cops onto the Salamancas.
Yeah.
And he thought this truck on the side of the road with the driver tied up would get the cops' attention. But, by the way, a Good Samaritan, I think that might even been the name of the episode, pulled over when they saw the guy tied up on the side of the road, called the police, or was gonna call the police, but they let the person the Good Samaritan let the driver go. Right. The driver called the Salamancas to tell them, hey, I got hit on the road, I don't know what happened, da da da. So the Salamancas show up and kill the Good Samaritan, interrogate the truck driver, and they're gonna kill him. And Mike follows him. Mike follows them out to this same spot that they're at with Nacho right now. Mike has a sniper rifle, and he's got it on Hector. He wants to kill Hector, but he just never gets a good shot. Nacho steps in a way. He goes behind a car, and Mike he's waiting for the moment, and all of a sudden, he hears this horn in the distance. What's that? And he goes back to his car, and there's something jammed in a horn and a note that says "Don't." And we eventually figure out that's Gus trying to stop Mike from killing Hector because Gus wants to kill Hector himself.
Yes.
Anyway, Gus witnesses them kill that truck driver, bury him in the desert. Anyway,
that's awesome. I forgot all about that.
It's a callback to how Mike, trying to get at the Salamancas, ended up getting at least one, if not two, innocent people killed. A, and B, this location we've seen before is a spot that they will go to off somebody.
Right.
Anyway, big tangent. Back to the scene at hand.
So, the opening segment of this episode is it pans on a desert, kind of goes through some debris, goes onto a blue flower, which
we're flashing back to the very opening of the whole.
This is the very opening. Yes. Yeah. A blue flower, which. For one, I was wondering what the heck that flower was and if that symbolized something. Obviously, we know what blue is, but I wonder if there was even more to it than what we even know, But anyways.
In that moment, it was very perplexing. We're like, what is this? They're just showing us desert
and
countryside, cactuses and dirt. And
actually, I never thought about it. Something just occurred to me, but we'll get to that in a sec. Then it unfocuses on the blue flower. And pans over to a glass with, I think, blood possibly on it. It may not have. It was raining, so maybe it didn't at the moment.
I couldn't even tell that it was a piece of glass.
I didn't either.
An object. Rain started to trickle down.
Yeah.
And made it kind of clarified a little more that there was an unnatural object, because it was just like desert's landscape. It's something that seemed like smooth and round. It didn't seem like something natural.
Yes.
Rain was hitting, and eventually we pieced together it's a little shard of glass.
Yes. Well, this glass, and this is what Sean was talking about. They Nacho gets this glass from that moment in the trailer. At least we think. It's probably
by the trailer. You mean
the spot where they got
trailer building, not the commercial trailer for the show. Yeah,
correct.
Moment with Mike when he brought out the alcohol.
Yes.
Nacho broke one of those glasses to get a shard. And again, I like pause, rewind, pause, trying to figure out. But in the truck, when they're heading out there, they tie Nacho's hands behind his back. And you see as Nacho reaches behind that there's something in his hand. I just could not figure out what it was. But it was that shard of glass that he got from the cup when they drank with Mike. It is still left in the desert later on.
And he uses that to stab Balsa in the leg.
Yeah, probably. It's apparently to cut out of.
Obviously, yes,
to cut out. Yes. Too. Yeah.
And
because at one point you even see blood dripping out of his hand, so he must be trying to manipulate that glass and cutting his hand like he's about to die. He's not worried about the pain.
No. But obviously, he needs to sell the story. And okay, one, this is a question for you. Do you know who? Alvarez is? That's the who they're trying to frame it on. The group they're trying to, Gus is saying.
I think it's just a rival drug gang.
I was thinking so. Yeah. I just didn't know if you knew any more detail, like, oh, this group happens to come later, or I don't recognize that name, but
I don't think they've made a particular point of showing. I think they've been mentioned maybe 3 total times.
Okay.
It might have been like the name on the money transactions they put in the safe for Nacho, and then it's not characters that we've really seen.
Okay. But obviously the point is these people did it, not Gus. He's been working for, the Alvarez's, Nacho has. And people, well, obviously Hector doesn't believe it. He's like, no, that, Gus did it. And then Nacho brings up how he pretty much put him in that wheelchair, and he just goes hammer on that story. You're just like, geez. And then he shoots himself in the head.
Yeah, he in this sudden moment, he has the glass, stabs Balsa, gets his gun, and so he's got his gun on a Balsa, and everyone's kind of stunned and doesn't know what to do. And I don't think this was part of the plan.
No.
A lot of people wonder, because Mike, in a distance, watching this, he sees this happen.
Yes.
And Mike says, do it. And I think some people interpreted that as like, do it, kill Balsa. But I think Mike actually meant, do it, kill yourself. I think Mike knows that if he kills Balsa here, if this doesn't go down as planned, not only is Nacho's dad in trouble, which Mike is committed to protecting, Mike and his family might be in trouble. A war is going to break out.
Yes.
If a gunfight starts between Gus and the Salamancas and Balsa's killed, Balsa's trying to keep the peace, it's just going to be tragedy and chaos for everyone. And so I think what Mike means when he says do it is like, do the plan,
Yeah.
And I think that Nacho, it's interesting because Nacho breaks from the plan, but still fundamentally does what needs to happen in the plan.
Yeah.
But he just gets to do it on his own terms.
Yes.
He says everything he needs to say to make the Salamancas, or even if Hector won't believe it no matter what, everything that Balsa needs to believe that Nacho wasn't working for Gus.
Yes.
And so to prevent a war. But Nacho still gets to tell the Salamancas off. He still gets to call Hector a psychopath, which he is. And he still gets a little dig on Gus.
I was thinking that. Yeah, I was going to say, I remember that.
Because when he takes full credit for putting Hector in that wheelchair, it's kind of like, I did this, you. Gus wants to be able to say, I did this, you, Hector. Gus wants to be rubbing it in Hector's face, but instead, Nacho gets to. And it's Gus's fault. Nacho's in his position. So he gets to kind of take a little something from Gus on his way out. He gets to have his peace. He gets to be the one to take himself out and not them. And there's some level he might have been tortured, I
was thinking that, this is so much simpler for him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it was really tough to see, really tough for Nacho to end up going out like that.
Yeah.
But on some level, he it could have been worse. You know, he
Yes.
got his final say. He got to his little piece of revenge or control or whatever it is he hadn't had for so long. You know.
Now, something I just realized is that blue flower symbolized Nacho. I realized I didn't catch that until I just brought up that thing. I was like, and that's just awesome.
Yeah, I think that was to clarify that in the end,
he was a good guy.
Supposed to be rooting for Nacho, that he was doing the right thing.
Yes.
He was a good guy. You know, that he started off in red. He started off in blue. The first time we saw Nacho was when Tuco took out the skaters and wanted to like kill him, and Nacho showed up as like the level head. He's like, how about we just break the legs instead? You know, like relative to Tuco, Nacho was a good guy in that moment. But later on, when he comes to Saul, when he goes to Daniel, he's usually wearing a red shirt, driving a red car. He was kind of a criminal, villainous character. But as a combination of his father starts to get threatened more, Hector starts to be more terrible, we start to feel like Nacho is trapped. Nacho is in a new role trying to protect his dad. He's not wearing red anymore.
Right.
And by the end, we see he's represented by the blue flower, that he went through, you know, his character arc, his transition, his redemption or whatever.
Yeah.
In the end, I think we're supposed to think fondly of him
and mourn for him. That's why the ring was there.
Yes.
but yeah.
But it's another example of how we talked earlier about like the scene with the, you know, getting a copy of Howard's car keys so they can steal the car, you know, and they make a little short film. Same thing. It's just like this little artistic short film of just some cinematic imagery of the desert and a rose and some rain. But then by the end of the episode, we're like, oh man, that was so much more meaningful. You start off like, what is going on here? To like, that was beautiful. You know,
exactly.
The show does that type of thing every episode.
So that ends episode 3. And one of the main characters. So we're gonna hit episode. Oh, that's right. Episode 3 also was called "Rock and Hard Place," which that's like a term, you know.
Yeah.
Stuck.
Nacho was caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yep. So episode 4 is called "Hit and Run." When I think of hit and run, I think of like someone actually hitting somebody and running from the scene, like they don't want to take responsibility.
Yeah.
That's in general what I was assuming that this episode was, but we'll see. Actually, real fast.
A lot of times there's double meanings.
Yeah. Real fast, I think we should take a 3-minute break to, you know, and then we'll come back to episode 4. So I'll be right back.
Take a chance to stretch my legs.
Yes. All right. I am back. We're just waiting for Sean. All right, so in general, one of the things I love about the shows. So I watch, Fear the Walking Dead, and every time I come from Fear to Better Call Saul, I'm like upset and annoyed on how bad, unfortunately, Fear has been this season. They're wishy-washy on how the characters are. The imagery's not that great. Plot lines are just not making any sense. And then I come to Better Call Saul, and the very first freaking, imagery, like the first thing you see on screen, gets me in a good mood. And that's how good this freaking show is. I feel, you could have like a pretty good show, and then come to this, and you just see the differences. But like, especially when you have a bad show, I think it's really interesting the comparisons of these two. John is coming back. John is coming back. All right. I am back.
All right, me too. Can you hear me?
Yes. I was just going over a little really fast. Now I watch Fear the Walking Dead. And just jumping in from Fear to Better Call Saul is like a ray of sunshine. I'm a fan of the Walking Dead stuff, but Fear has been like really bad this season, like really bad. And I get annoyed and all that, and then literally the very first shot, the very first thing you see, the imagery of Better Call Saul just destroys that the whole episode. It's one freaking shot. That I don't know. It says something about how good the show is for one, but we're gonna get hit episode 4, Hit and Run. The intro is a bicycle scene. Like you see two people who I've never seen before ride a bicycle, which I'm wondering if we actually had seen them. But they're riding a bicycle. So. Okay. I was wondering if there were the people that Gus meets in in Breaking Bad. He like works for somebody, and I didn't know if that was the same guy.
I guess it's possible we saw them in Breaking Bad, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm almost certain
we
haven't seen him before.
But two people riding a bike. One's dressed in, like a lime green, and the other one's dressed in like a light blue. Like it's very pop out colors. It seems like like a bicycle uniform, or not a bicycle. What would they call that? Jersey?
Okay. Tracksuit.
Tracksuit. Yeah, thank you. They go and they see a house. And it looks like it's a couple, like a married couple, and she's like, "Why are they, painting it that color?" And it's like this bright red. And then they drive, ride their bicycles to their house, which is across the street, I think. And go into the house, and this is a really neat way of how they story tell something without even really saying anything. But they're walking into a house, and you just think, they're just everyday person, and you see a bodyguard walk by, like a guy with a gun, like an assault rifle or something, and then you see another guy.
Yeah, it's like what do you call it? Body armor.
Yeah, and they're talking to them, and they're being like casual, like they're not like.
She's like, "Hey, do you want a sandwich?"
Exactly, and I don't know. It's just a really neat scene, a really neat way of taking, telling that story. I guess you could say, because they could have done bad situations or bad writing. You may interpret this scene a completely different way and write it and show it, but I mean, the people who make Better Call Saul just know how to make things interesting, which I love. Then you realize that this is a house that Mike is working for, and they're trying to protect Gus. Kind of blend him in to society, I guess. That's why I didn't know 100% who if these people represented something else other than just that. But
I think this is the way I pieced all that together. There's a couple things I'm confident of. Is it Gus's house is connected underground through a tunnel to this house, and this house they're using as sort of surveillance.
Yeah.
And I'm certain about all that. And the way I pieced together everything they're presenting to us is that I think this couple is just a regular couple in the
Okay.
neighborhood.
Okay.
I think one thing they demonstrate as they're riding their bikes around, commenting on the houses and the stories of the neighborhood, is that they're I don't know what to say. Maybe like Snoopy or rumor, gossipy,
Yes.
busybodies. They're kind of being They're very aware of and judgmental of things going on in a neighborhood.
Right. Oh,
which
quick
I
thing.
think means. Oh, go ahead.
Someone says, "Can you watch a amazing bulk trailer with a straight face?" I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know that. Anyways, you can continue.
And the fact that this couple was presented in blue and green, and I seem to remember there were some splashes of yellow, some yellow highlights in either their suits or the bikes or something.
Yeah.
So, but it indicates to me that they're not bad guys, that they're some combination of good guys and a facade, a cover, something being hidden or protected.
Yep.
And sure enough, that's what this house is. I think that Gus, probably even before this scenario with Lalo, just knew that he needed to have some sort of backup plan, protection, surveillance around himself. Just like Lalo did. We saw that Lalo, when shit hit the fan, he had this escape tunnel, he had a body double, he had dental records ready, like he had, and he prepared for some kind of worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Same thing, I think Gus probably was able to convince these neighbors to let him set up surveillance in there. Probably he's paying them some money, but probably also they're the type of people who would want this. They want to be snoopy and nosy and judgmental of their neighbors. So someone that's going to help spy on the neighborhood, yeah, sure. You're going to pay us how much money to help spy in the neighborhood? We want to spy in the neighborhood anyway. So that's how I kind of make sense of all this.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It also calls back to a moment in Breaking Bad when Walt had kind of gotten frustrated or fed up with a scenario, and he got a gun and he went to Gus's house. And as he's going up to the doorstep, his phone rings and it's Mike, and he says, "Go home, Walt." You remember that scene?
Yes, I do actually.
It's kind of like, whoa, how is Mike so on top of Walt to like, oh, this is how he's just got surveillance. So he's saw him on camera coming there. Yeah.
So in general, this episode mainly focuses, I feel, on Saul, Kim, and Howard, but you have a little bit of Gus and Mike, and this is one of the scenes, and we'll just hit more on this house because later on in the episode you have Gus basically go. So the shot ends with like this door, with an address, like you see the address on the top of the door. And Gus goes to that door, which is that the red house?
No.
Okay, I didn't think it was. I just had it, but it's the house like across the street or connected or whatever, so he could tunnel into this house. But basically, he goes into the house. He dresses up. He puts a gun on his ankle, like a small gun. And this comes up later on in episodes, but and then he goes into a secret passage which leads in to the house that couple we're talking about is, and he.
Oh wait, I wish I could remember exactly, but I don't think he put that gun on. I think he already had it and he readjusted.
Sorry,
they're just like showing us that he's carrying a gun around.
My bad. You're right. You're right. But it's to make just not him aware, but it's to make us aware that he has protection.
Also, I didn't catch it, but I think when he walks through that tunnel, someone crosses from the other direction. I think that's a body double. I think that's someone else at his same, kind of like Lalo had a body double. I think that's someone else that's like about the same size and build, and that he has stay in that house. So if someone did break in or look in a window or whatever, they would think he was there.
That's awesome. I actually didn't catch that. That makes a lot of sense. And then he goes and talks to Mike in the house with the couple. And he pretty much like breaks down like, are you doing everything in your power to find Lalo? And I like how like pragmatic, Mike is, because he's like, I have guys working 18 hours, it's not like I have like an army, but yes, we are trying to protect you, and just neat ways of how they write the dialogue, it's pretty much in that scene. But the point is,
that scene did a really good job of conveying to us
Mm.
all the activity that Mike
Mhm.
and Gus had going on for the sake of security, and also conveying to us the level of paranoia that Gus was under.
Yes, yes. And I don't even think I like caught how paranoid he was until obviously the later episodes. Like he gets, I've never seen him, I think, as paranoid as
Yeah.
they presented him as. But it's not even in this episode, it's in later episodes. Which we'll get to that when we
You're
get
more
to it.
aware of it. You see it in this episode too.
Yes. No, it definitely is. I just didn't catch it, until
Yeah.
But then we go to do you have any other thing that you want to talk about with the Gus and Mike thing? Because we're just going to jump into Saul and Kim and Howard.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, because it's
If I have
pretty
another
straightforward,
particular
that
thing, I can't
stuff.
think of it. So yeah.
So Howard goes and visits his psychiatrist. Like he gets out of his car, parks it, and like the patients only sign, and then goes and meets a psychiatrist, which I don't think we knew he was meeting a psychiatrist at the time. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like this is the first time we're presented with that. And you get to know that he's like having potential issues with his wife, as he kind of mentions that. How are you doing, Diva Zoo? It's a cute little emote. But I started like really feeling bad for Howard, just because he is trying to make an effort to make his life better. Like he's like trying to, he's seen a psychiatrist because he knows that it's probably, when people see psychiatrists, they're trying to fix issues that they have. And I never thought that like Howard, well, that's not true. I think in the earlier seasons you realize that he is struggling, but like it's nice to see him do something about it.
Yeah, I think this scene and this season in general, they're making every effort they can to show us that Howard is a good person on almost every level.
Yeah.
I think they have been trying to make him a good person all along.
Yeah.
In the beginning, there was a little bit of misdirection. It made it seem like he was being a jerk to Jimmy, but we realized it was actually Chuck. That Chuck was making Howard do certain things at the law firm, and Howard liked Jimmy. But for one reason or another, maybe because that initial hitting of Howard against Jimmy, the fact that Jimmy, who's kind of the protagonist of the show, whether we should be rooting for him or not, he's kind of presented that way. The show's about him. It's called Better Call Saul, and since he kind of has it out for Howard, I think a lot of the audience also wants to not like Howard.
Yeah.
Howard also, on some level, however fair this is, I still think he's kind of perceived as like the rich white guy. And a lot of times rich white guys are like villains, they're oppressors, they got what they have unfairly, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that they've tried really hard to make Howard be a good guy, but because a couple times he's had to do something about other characters who were being bad, Jimmy and somewhat Kim. And we're supposed to root for Jimmy and Kim. It makes us not like him. And when they are mad at him, we want to be on their side. And so I think this season they're trying to clarify, which, by the way, it also is clear to me because of their use of color, because we know they use blue to indicate positive good guy protagonists, and Howard has always been in blue.
Yes.
I'm confident that Howard is meant to be a good guy. But there is this slice of people out there that want to hate on him. And so I think they're using this season, a lot of scenes in this season, including this one of the psychiatrist, to get people who maybe are like Howard already, or maybe are indifferent on him, to understand and care more about him. And maybe, hopefully, even to get people who don't like him for one reason or another to actually like him, or at least empathize with him. And I think, asking for help in the first place is a tough thing to do. It takes a certain amount of
pride,
awareness, and even courage, and maybe you have to like shed a little ego or whatever to go to someone for help. And Howard has done that, so he can't be too cold or arrogant or closed off to be seeking help. And so just on a base level, we see that. And additionally, we see the help that he needs is with his wife. I was hardly aware he even had a wife.
I didn't know either.
It at all.
Yeah.
And I looking back, you see he does have a wedding ring. So but she's never come up in conversation and been part of the plot. a little bit of a tangent, but I do want to point out a lot of people speculate about what's going to happen to Kim. And a big clue to what's going to happen to Kim is she's not in Breaking Bad. And
Yep.
so a lot of people think, oh, she must die. Her and Jimmy must break up. She gets vacuumed away and she's in hiding. She must have, all these crazy ideas.
Yeah.
But she might still just be there. She might still just be a lawyer. She might just be married to Jimmy, living at home with him, going to do her pro bono work. And we wouldn't necessarily see her in Breaking Bad, just like we never saw Howard's wife in Better Call Saul.
Yep.
More than 5 seasons went by before we really hardly even knew he had a wife, much less did we meet her.
Yep.
And there's been a lot more Howard in Better Call Saul than there was Saul in Breaking Bad. So I think also, maybe she is dead. Maybe she did break up with Jimmy. I don't know for sure. But a lot of people sort of assume, since she wasn't in Breaking Bad, that she must be hidden or dead or in jail or something like that. I do not think that's necessarily true at all, based on how long it took before we finally saw that Howard had a wife.
Right.
But anyway, in this scene, we're not only seeing that Howard is seeking help, which shows some strength of character, which makes us care about how his life is going. And we even get details of the struggle with his wedding. So he presents himself in this perfect, tidy, handsome, appropriate way, which maybe also, annoys some people. But we see it's not that simple. There's more to him, like almost any character.
Yep.
One other little noteworthy bit here is it in the interview, the Talking Saul interview, he talked about his character in general. It was him and one of the showrunners. Several people were in this interview, and he says that early on, he, trying to understand and define his character, was kind of embracing a Darth Vader persona. This dark lord that comes in. But the showrunners told him, like, right now we're pitching him as a villain to Saul, but there's more to it than that. Think about the fact, this is what they told him, and said, think about the fact that we chose you to play him. And it's partly the showrunners are talking about what a great, friendly, nice guy he is. So why would we have chosen you, this great, friendly, nice guy, to play this Darth Vader villain? And so that made Howard reevaluate what his character is supposed to be. And it should make the audience think about that too. Doggone it. Anyone out there who has something against Howard, you're looking at it the wrong way. I don't know how to get it through people's heads.
Also, it's nice that it's not like he's been seeing the psychiatrist for a little bit, because the psychiatrist at least knows a little bit, even if he doesn't have a clue what he's talking about, which he says that, in one part, he's like, I'm not a lawyer or whatever. Yeah. He's like, yeah, I know. But anyways,
they've got a rapport. It's not like his first time there.
Exactly.
Which also makes sense because Jimmy needs to know Howard's routine and schedule to do this little car heist. So he needs to know when he's going there, how long he's going to be in there, where he parks, etc.
And this is another thing too. This is something that made me upset, or made me sympathize, I guess, with Howard. Is he was best friend, or at least a really good partner to Chuck, and Chuck died. How's that? If you're a good person, that's going to affect you. Well, it should affect, I should say.
The fallout of Chuck's death in the earlier seasons, Howard was disheveled. He was broken apart.
That's why I forget about that.
His character in a plot back then, and he isn't necessarily over that yet.
Exactly. So of course he could be seeing a psychiatrist, just not for his marriage, but to deal with his how he's been dealing with Howard. So I don't know. I can't sympathize with him more. I root for Howard a lot. But that's not even the point of the scene, which is funny. I mean, I guess it's the point of the scene that you realize he's supposed to be at a psychiatrist and you get to know more about him. The point of this scene was Saul needs to dress up as Howard, to steal his car, to do something.
A point of the scene. That's the thing. All their scenes have multiple points.
Exactly.
This scene had many different points. Plot wise, at this moment, it's setting up Saul stealing Howard's car. But it also does a lot to flesh out characters and set up empathy and everything else. Yeah.
I love how they set up the scene with Saul pretending to be Howard. Is Howard, he's talking to a psychiatrist and he says, I had a dream. And then it shows a scene of Howard. You're like, is Howard talking about his dream? And then it flips over and it's Saul.
We see someone walking in his blue suit.
Oh my God.
They're blonde. And Howard's talking about his dream. Yeah.
Very cleverly presented. And And then you see Saul, and he has like yellow in his face. Oh, I like laugh.
Yeah, it's a hair wig or dye or whatever. And yeah.
I mean, he did obviously a good job of pretending to be Howard. It was like ridiculous, but so funny. I loved it. But he obviously steals his car with the key he made a copy of, and goes, picks up a hooker who's what's her name? Her name's in here somewhere. Give me a second. Wendy, thank you.
Also, let me say real quick, Flint, this is something I've kind of become aware of.
Huh?
People think of the word hooker as being kind of derogative. It's nowhere near as extreme.
Yes.
But it's kind of like the N-word or something like that. That sex worker is a more appropriate term to use. Just so you know, sex worker is
okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I didn't know that. And yeah, Wendy's a character in herself. She has like a drug problem, I think, and is all over the place. And it's fun to see how Saul deals with her. I think she was like trying to get like a soda. Like he's like in a rush, like, so I was like, we need to go.
Mission. Yeah. He's got a timeline. He's got this plan. He's got everything worked out just right. She's like, hold on, I gotta make a phone call. Like, wait, I want to get a bagel. He's like, no, get in the car.
Yeah.
We'll do all that later. She's like, but I already put a quarter in. I'll give you a whole roll of quarters.
Just different wavelengths. This is really funny. But they show another scene of Kim and Cliff talking outside in like, some like cafe or restaurant. And Kim is supposed to be there with Cliff to see an incident, but they winded up talking about her pro bono work, like basically how to benefit her, which I don't know if that was like her intention. I don't think it was. She just wanted to make sure he was there.
Exactly. He starts telling her about this project that he has.
Yes.
And he's like, "Hey, you could work with me on this project." And this is all just like an accidental happy coincidence that happened in their conversation. It was really just meant to make sure Cliff was there to witness this moment with Jimmy and Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
Quote unquote Jimmy and Wendy. It's going to look like Howard to Cliff, yeah.
And of course, Jimmy flies by in Howard's car, slams his brakes, throws Wendy out, and then speeds off. And Cliff's like, "What? What was that? What was that? Howard?" And
Howard has this vanity license plate that says Namaste.
Yes,
so it kind of stands out. It's recognizable.
What does that mean? Something? The
Namaste, it's I think it means something along the lines of thank you. It's usually how you close out a yoga session. You say,
"Oh, that's really cool."
Yeah,
more
shows Howard's kind of like calm, even, peaceful attitude that makes no sense with him screeching through the road.
It was just so yeah. The point was to keep planting that seed into Cliff's head that Howard must be using, and yeah, I mean it's entertaining. It's funny, how. I remember on the sticky note that was one of the things on the sticky note was that license plate. The Namaste. He replaced it with something else. I can't remember what it was, but then it comes to
early on. They even talked about. Before we were even understanding what they were doing, kind of like you said, that like last episode, they actually had that planning board up, and the episode before that, they planted the coke. Like this has been going on for a while. Like kind of comes to a head more and more as the episodes progress. But you remember at one point they were worried about the timeline.
Yes,
it was like, so we're gonna get the license plate. I think they wanted to get like a different car.
They were wanting to get a double car.
Yeah, time for that, so they're just gonna steal Howard's car. Was the new plan.
And. So they had to figure out how to do that, which they make it a copy of the key, did steal his car, and then bring it back to the spot where he parked. Which an important factor for that for Saul was to put a cone where he parked, and he gets back to the psychiatrist's office, and someone moved the cone, and And Saul's like all pissed because he's like, "Oh, there goes my plan," and then he decides to move the sign and park the car in an emergency spot. Which I was sitting there like thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, would he be that out of it to not notice? Howard, by the way. But I feel like I would have noticed that, but maybe he's just on a different like he has so much going on in his head, Howard. Especially if he is having issues with his wife. Maybe that's he wasn't thinking about it. But whatever the case,
I'm not so sure I would have noticed it. I think of it in these terms.
Yeah.
How many times have you come out of the grocery store and not remember where your car is?
That is true. But it wasn't on a gore.
You cannot quite be sure about where it is. And at the moment when you find it, you don't think, oh, I do remember it was the 4th row over, 7th card back right next to it. You're just like, oh, there's my car, and you get in. If it had been 2 spots over, would you have noticed it?
No.
Even if you didn't forget in the first place, if you knew where you parked, you don't know exactly where you parked. You just see your car, you go to it. I think it's very reasonable.
Thank you, Kazu, for saying I'm adorable. We're just talking about Saul. Better Call Saul. But yeah, no, it was a fun scene no matter what. Like, Saul having to come up with or improvise a situation that didn't go as planned. And, and they made it funny. But then they go back. Yeah.
I just want to make a correction. I just Googled namaste real quick.
Yes.
I said that it meant something kind of along the lines of thank you.
Yeah.
Which maybe it kind of can. First of all, the word has kind of a broad meaning, and so maybe it can be used that way. The context I've known that word in is the end of a yoga class, and so that's why it kind of made sense to say thank you. Thank you for giving me this class. Thank you for taking part of this class. But really, it can be kind of generically used as a greeting or a farewell. Like you might meet someone, say, "Oh, namaste," and when you leave, okay, namaste. Okay. And it means kind of connected to that. It means like I have a feeling of kindness and respect toward you. And so you could see, hey, namaste, I like you. All right, namaste, I like you. That's the realm of what it means. It's kind of like a happy, peaceful feeling that you have towards another person.
Right.
And that's what Howard has on his car. Clearly a good guy, I think.
Yep. So Kim drops off, Wendy, and has tells her that she could help her out if she ever needs any help. Still, I think Wendy's character is so interesting just because it's hard to relate to her because she's just so out of it. In reality, I meant which is kind of funny, just having Howard try to get his life together and she's just completely disconnected from reality. But anyway, then
see that's the streak that Kim has in her trying to help people out.
You're right. You're right.
She can see that Wendy's not in a good spot in life, and if you need help, call me.
Next thing they have Saul talking. Let's see. Saul and Kim are talking about what happened. Saul goes over the events that happened with Howard. What's up?
There was another key thing that happened with that bit with Wendy. Wendy thought that there were cops watching her. That was an important.
Oh, that's right. And I forgot. Right after that, Kim drives off, and she realizes that she thinks someone is watching her and
following her.
Yes.
And,
you're right. I forgot about that tidbit. So Saul, talks about the Howard situation from his point of view, and she probably discusses the same. But they're having a lot of fun. It looks like they're enjoying doing this, enjoying each other's company. Kim and Saul. Or Jimmy.
I gotta say that was one thing I really loved about that moment. Something that I think that film doesn't usually portray well is that in our lives, real people going through the world, when something cool or funny or unique happens, we talk about it. We want to tell that story, right? If you're driving home and someone throws a rock at you, or someone falls and spills a bag of oranges all over the ground, things like that, you go home and you tell your friend or your coworkers, people talk about things that happen. So when Saul does this crazy freaking thing, when he picks up a sex worker, he's in costume as Howard, he steals a car, drives back, and then someone parked in the spot and they move the cone? Who moves a cone? And he's trying to move the sign. It was a whole, an extraordinary event. And he tells Kim about it. He tells Kim this story. And I think that's such an important thing to show that people talk about what happens in their lives. A moment like that wouldn't just be another day that Jimmy would tell Kim this story.
Mm-hmm.
And Kim tells him, by the way, Cliff actually offered me to be part of this new project he's doing. So it was, once again, this scene had multiple points to it.
Yes. And she also brings up at the end that she thinks she was being watched. Like, she doesn't keep that to herself. She wants to tell, because maybe it's in her head, maybe it's not. And of course, he kind of says that, we just got away with this. So of course you're trying to find reasons, to be guilty, or you someone to follow you, so, which obviously that comes back, in this episode, the car, because I think the next scene is.
Before you go on, I want to point out, I thought that was a super crucial moment here. Is it what Saul says when she feels like she's being followed? And Saul's like, you're being paranoid. I'm not gonna remember the exact quote, but he says something like, the wicked always look over their shoulder, or something like that. And she's like, "Do you think we're wicked?" And he's kind of stumped for a second, because he didn't really want to do this in the first place. He was a little, just like he had these scams that he wanted to run in the past, and Kim was like, I guess. Now she has one she has to run. He's like, I guess. Like, he's trying to embrace it. He's good at coming up with a scam, but he's still kind of shaky. And I don't think he meant to, but when he says this, Kim takes a moment of self-reflection, and she says, "Do you think we're wicked?" And he doesn't say, "No, we're not wicked." He's like, you're wicked hot, Like, that's the best he can come up with, because he does think they're wicked,
That is true.
He like deflects answering that question. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was a crucial moment.
Oh, it is. So the next scene has Jimmy going to the courthouse, and everyone's acting like doing their job, like they're not acting personable to Jimmy, and almost like
being very cold to him.
Yeah, cold, straight by the book,
being short and unrespondent,
and he eventually confronts this is the DDA, I think, Bill. What's DDA? Is that they say he's a DDA?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
But anyway,
you could have been PDA.
No, it was DDA. This is so when you pull up like the information on Amazon, it tells who they are. And they say he's a DDA Bill, and then his last name. And I was like,
I'm sure it's something district attorney, deputy district attorney, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I know earlier on in the season, like, he was happy that he got promoted finally. Maybe that's this position, I guess. But anyways, this is a guy who Saul has had interactions with, Bill, and Bill's like, you're working for the cartels, and that's just wrong. And so, like, obviously,
it kind of goes back to that moment when the cops were confronting Jimmy about having represented Guzman, and that he's disappeared, that the $7 million bill, the cops kind of knew something shady was going on. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy's like, it's not my fault you couldn't keep up with this guy. That amount of bill, you didn't have cops on him.
Yeah.
You can't blame me because you lost Lalo. I mean, de Guzman. And he kind of slipped up there. And then we see Suzanne go to Kim and be like, Jimmy might have got mixed up in something. Kim is like, we can handle this on our own. Don't, leave us alone,
Yeah.
But anyway, word has gotten around that Jimmy is working with this cartel murderer, mastermind criminal guy. And so people don't want to be associated with him. Some people maybe are actually frustrated or disappointed in him that he would do this. Mm-hmm. Some people maybe are worried about getting mixed up in whatever he's mixed up in. But one way or the other, no one's doing him any favors. No one's treating him like a friend. No one wants to eat lunch with him.
So it's like, it makes complete sense, but sad still. Like his reputation is kind of getting jeopardized, at least in the court, But then
I can only feel so bad for him because he's got a suitcase with $100,000 sitting in a closet at home. So he got paid a lot of money to go get that to represent de Guzman.
Yeah. So they have like this upshot view of him eating lunch. Well, of people eating lunch, and people are all together, and then they get to him, and he's like by himself. And then he gets a phone call of a client, and then he gets another phone call of a client, and he gets like all these people that basically want them to him to represent them. And then we go to the hair salon. Not the hair salon. The spa day and nails. Yeah. And there's just a ton of people there. So many people that it annoys the owner. She's like, you need to get a place. But you start realizing that like people recognize that he could get, anybody out of a situation. If he could get Lalo out, which people know, or at least a Salamanca, he get me out.
It harkens back to that scene in Breaking Bad when Jesse first took Walt to Saul Goodman to be the lawyer. And Walt was like really reluctant. This guy, and Jimmy's like, or Jesse's like, look, you don't need a criminal lawyer. You need a criminal lawyer. Yes. And that's what Saul's reputation now is.
Mm-hmm. And he has to either be happy with it or not. And he's probably like indifferent. Like it's going to get him a lot of money. He's going to be able to take care of Kim and him. But it's not the most.
On some level, he thinks there's a couple things. On some level, he likes being able to work the system.
Does,
and
yes.
And that's part of what Chuck was worried about. Slipping Jimmy I can deal with. Slipping Jimmy with a law degree is like a chimpanzee with a machine gun. That's what Chuck said. That Jimmy knows how to be shady and work angles and take advantage of situations. And so he it's sort of like a thrill to him, a challenge to him. It's like a rush. It's like it strokes his own ego. It's part of his identity even. And so this is kind of his chance to do it as a lawyer.
Yep.
These people that are gotten in some kind of trouble or another, he likes the challenge of trying to work the system to get them off.
Yeah.
Also, on some level, some of them maybe are being bullied or taken advantage of or are going to get a worse punishment than what they deserve because of the way the system works. Like on some level, he thinks he's helping people out,
Because I mean, when this was like a season or two ago when there was all those students that could get like the Howard's company could help them out. He was like trying to go for that.
Give out the scholarship.
Yes, yeah. He was trying to go for the underdog, like the person who actually needed it. And
yeah, exactly.
Also, it goes back to also Howard was even willing to try to help him. It's just you can't change the board's mind, and the board wanted the rich kids, the people who have connections potentially, like a parent that's like higher up or something like that, but basically not the poor kid.
It didn't even make sense. I don't even think so much it was the rich kid or the parents that were higher up, although the rich kid and the parents that are higher up are more likely to have a kid who's on this path. It's that like when they're giving out the scholarship, they only have like one or maybe they had 3 or something scholarships to give out. So who do we give it to? We have all these candidates.
Yes.
Okay, all the candidates have straight A's. Okay, well, all the candidates are student council. Okay, well, all the
That's
candidates, did this or the other. But this candidate was arrested for shoplifting. Okay, well, drop them out. They have to find some reason
that is true
to pick among all these people who are all really good. Jimmy's idea was, though, that all these kids who are already really good, they're going to keep being really good. They'll get some other scholarship. They're going to keep getting good grades in college. But this one kid that made one mistake, if everyone keeps looking at that one mistake and passing them by, how are they ever going to get there? They need their chance. They need giving them a chance. This is our chance that we can do it for them. And Jimmy makes this point to the board. Like I think they'd even made their vote already.
Yeah.
Jimmy aired his grievances, and Howard's like, Jimmy makes a good point.
Yep.
Let's revote. Like Howard really listened and understood and kind of tried to take Saul's side. Of course, in the revote, they still didn't give it to the girl.
Yeah.
But that was one of my favorite scenes. He goes out and gives that girl a speech. He's like, look, you're going to struggle with this your whole life and you got to fight. You're going to have to cut corners. And yeah, I think he's trying to justify some of his bad actions.
I was just say this feels like a parallel to who Saul was, that people recognize him as Slippy Jimmy, or say Slippy Jim. And can't move on. Like,
yeah, it's hard for him to break out of that.
Yeah.
And so he eventually just embraces it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to warn this girl in the first place. And, maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. You see where he's coming from. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on such a big tangent, but I really did love that scene.
Yes.
I think that was in the season
that was 4, but
4 finale?
Sure yeah, maybe, yeah.
Finale. Yeah. Anyway.
So the next scene has to deal with Kim, and Kim is at her usual restaurant. I wish I knew the name of it. Because I feel like it comes up a lot, the dining.
It does. I can't remember. El Cabezo or something.
That sounds about right, yeah. But anyways, she's there. She's dealing with the client. And then as she's talking to the client, she looks outside the window and recognizes that car that's been following her. And normal people would just ignore it, I feel, or call the cops. But I actually love the scene. But she decides, I'm just going to go over there and confront him. And she goes, you see, like, from the point of view of the guys, she's behind the car and she gets the license plate immediately. That's the first thing she does, which is pretty smart, honestly. And then she walks up to him and she's like, "Are you following me?" I don't know. You realize that they're not cops, but they're probably not Salamancas. So that
you don't necessarily realize they're not cops. They still might have been cops.
True. Well, she did say, "Are you cops?" And you're right. They didn't answer it, but they also didn't. Yeah, deny it. So.
But they did immediately leave. Like, she understands how the law works. That if they have to tell her, and so they just left. And so it was interesting and hard to read. And I'm not necessarily an expert on the law, but I don't think that we or her were supposed to definitively understand they weren't cops.
Yeah, well, they were out to directly hurt them in the car. They were like almost a scout. Like, I got interpretation. Okay, they're not a threat. They may be working for a threat, but
Yeah.
But then she goes back into the diner, and she gets confronted. Now, there's not, there's like a scene after or something like that, but she gets confronted by Mike, which I was trying to think. I was like, is this the first time they've actually met each other?
It is.
And I love the scene. Like, I was like, I needed the scene. I didn't even realize I needed it. Sorry.
Actually, I realize it's not the first time they've
encountered each other, but it's the first
time we've seen them on screen together. But
she does bring up, aren't you the guy who was the toll booth? I can't remember what they call that. She called him what he was, and he's like, I was
security for the parking lot at the courthouse.
Yes. But Mike is there to answer any questions she has, because it was Mike's people that were following her, and he says that Lalo is alive, and I have guys here to protect you. And I like how he says, Lalo basically has bigger fish to fry, and the 1,000 to 1 chance that he basically goes after Kim and Saul, I have people to watch you guys.
He didn't necessarily say that they were there to protect her.
Oh, let me phrase that. He said it to. He's trying to find them. You're right. To see. So if he does show up, they could get him. They want to kill Lalo.
Right. They want to know if he appears.
You're right.
So that's why we're following you, because he might come after you. Hey, maybe we'll protect you also, but that's not our reason. We're not worried about you necessarily.
Obviously, this is more of a future thing, but I'm curious because you do point that out, that like they're there to find him, not or see if Lalo shows up. Do they still have guys on them? Because he mentions, I don't think so, by the way, but part of me wonders if there's one person on them or something, because we're not supposed to see them. He says you'll never see them again. Okay.
They say, we'll talk about it more later, I presume.
Yeah.
But just since you're bringing it up, when Lalo realizes when he calls Hector that the phone is tapped. And so he tells Hector, I'm going after Gus tonight. And then he does that because he wants Gus to scramble all his forces. He gets to see how they react. Yeah. Everyone moves from all the different spots where they might be looking for Lalo to where Gus is, because they think Lalo's going after Gus.
Yeah, I thought I remember that Mike was like, we got everyone.
Yeah.
Too. But okay. Obviously, this
There's
is
other
details,
stuff. Yeah. bottom line, no, they
Okay.
pulled.
I didn't think so. I just so so after that you have let's see. Also scam the play. Oh, the business. So they end off the episode when Saul basically buys a new place that's near the courthouse. That's not the spa, or the nail salon.
New place of business.
Yes, and he shows Kim, this place, and it needs a lot of work, obviously, because like he just bought it, has a toilet seat in the middle of the place. She even mentions that she's like, "Don't move the toilet seat," which is funny. But as they're walking away, she's like looking around. Basically, she's
so paranoid about
exactly.
Yeah. I remember that scene from the trailer from before the season started. It showed that, and I was like, "Oh man!" It made me worried for Kim. It's something that it might have been interesting to do is like to check off all the images we got from the trailer before the season started. What have we seen so far?
Maybe we could do that later.
I was paying attention to it for the first 2 or 3 episodes, but I've kind of forgotten now.
Yeah.
But they showed us with her heel bobbing up and down. We saw that.
Oh yeah. Oh, another thing to point out too, and this is with Kim and Mike. Actually, wait, I just lost train of thought. Oh no, give me a sec. Well, no. I completely lost train of thought.
Something about Kim and Mike's meeting. Something about Mike working in the parking lot. Something about the guys following Kim.
Yeah, I just had a blank.
The toilet.
Yeah. So I know something to do with like what they were talking about, like Kim and Mike. What was it? So they talked about Lalo, and he's alive. Oh, that's right. That she asked, why didn't you tell Saul? Why did you confront me? And he says that you're made of sterner things.
Yeah.
Or sterner stuff, because he thinks that like I guess that like Saul just can't handle this.
Yeah.
I think that's just interesting. That's the whole reason why he confronted her in the first place, because
remember Mike was a witness to that moment when Lalo came into their apartment.
Oh yeah. You're right.
Remember, he was outside the window with the sniper. He knew that Lalo was on the way. He called Jimmy. He's like, "Hey, leave your phone, leave me on the line, set your phone down so I can hear what's going on." And so Lalo's like interrogating Jimmy, and eventually Kim steps up. She's like, "You need to get your house in order. Why are you picking on this guy? You know what he went through in the desert for you? Why did you trust him to get your millions of dollars? You don't know what you're doing." Yeah. And she kind of stood up to Lalo. And so that earned a little bit of respect for her.
Mike. Yeah.
In Mike's eyes. Yeah.
Makes sense.
And to be fair, I don't think it means that Mike doesn't have respect for Jimmy.
No,
he just has more respect for Kim when it comes to like keeping her cool and being tough.
Yes.
And like another factor is that Jimmy is maybe a little bit more wild and unpredictable. Mike has seen that from Jimmy. And Mike also might be making a slightly unfair assessment, of Jimmy, because in that moment when Lalo came to confront them in the apartment, remember that Saul had just gone through the desert. He was like dehydrated and disheveled and blisters in his shoulder, and also Kim had encountered Lalo before one time, so it wasn't completely out of nowhere for her. Like, I don't know. I think about it a lot. To be fair, Mike also just went through the desert, and he kept his cool with his gun in the distance, on the whole thing. And Jimmy's personality is a little bit more to like, fast talk his way out of things. So, if something crazy started to happen, or even just knowing her being followed, Jimmy might want to do something about it. Remember, he went to Mike in a panic, like went to Mike's home and like banged on the door to find out what was going on with Lalo because he was so anxious. So anyway, you can see reasons why Mike might want to give Kim the heads up, but not Saul. So.
Right. Now, do you know why the episode is called Hit and Run, or your suspicions? I actually don't 100% know, personally.
I think it's just like the the hit on Howard, and then they ran away. Like they
Yeah,
got his
yeah,
car. Made him look bad to Cliff, and took off.
yeah. So yeah, that's episode 4. Now from this point on, we're going to be talking about massive spoilers of what is current to date, predictions, pretty much just what happened. I want to like at least talk a little bit about it. We're going to dive into more detail on episode 7, but from this point on, if you don't want to keep watching, don't watch, because we're going to spoil what pretty much just happened in the last, I want to say like 10 minutes or something like that. Maybe a little bit more, but all right. So with that, for one, what did you think of what just happened, I guess, with Lalo? Or maybe this episode 7 in general.
Yeah,
well, actually, we should talk about, because it was your predictions in general. Like, a lot of stuff.
I can't help but be a little proud of how perfectly I nailed almost everything that was happening. And I feel like I wasn't just taking wild guesses. I had like reasons. I pieced together all the different clues, everything they showed us, how and why it was all going to happen. The one thing, especially centered around, the plot against Howard.
Yeah.
The one thing I was slightly off on, like I predicted that something bad was going to happen to Howard. I think that part of why they've been like letting us get to know his character better and making us more empathetic with him is because it's more tragic when something bad happens.
Yes.
And I thought the tragic thing was going to be part of what Jim and Kimmy did. I thought that the drug was going to, he was going to have a heart condition, or maybe he would like frantically slip on the stairs as he's running around or something like that.
Yeah.
And none of that happened. Well,
it did happen. It just didn't happen like that.
Right. In that moment at the meeting with Sandpiper, there wasn't some tragedy.
Yeah.
But he did meet tragedy. And even that, I feel like if I had been like pausing every scene and analyzing it, right?
Yeah.
I think I would have had, I think it's figure outable that Lalo was going to show up at Jimmy's.
Yes.
It gave us clues within this episode. Go ahead.
I remember when I told you about the boxing episode, which I think that's going to be covered. Well, definitely going to be covered next time we do it next week. But I thought Howard was invincible. I didn't say invincible, but I just didn't think he was going to die. And then at that moment, I realized he's going to die possibly to the cartels. Something to do with the cartels. I don't know what. He's going to get mixed up in somehow. He didn't exactly get mixed up. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. So I was wrong on that. But he did meet his end to the cartels, technically. So I was happy, but I remember like that feeling when I realized, oh no, they're gonna possibly kill him off. Yeah. I got like that. I was like, no.
Yeah.
And then when it played out, I like they showed the candle, like it looked like it was getting a breeze the first time, and honestly, when he was in the apartment, because he storms and goes into the apartment. I was gonna say storms. Yeah, but yeah, Howard wants to confront Kim and Saul, or Kim and Jimmy. Like, why did you do this? Like, yeah, I see you trying to ruin my reputation, and I could bounce back, but like, why? Like, what's wrong with you guys?
Yeah.
And you can't help but like, yeah, but it's pretty messed up what they did to him. We know that like they get a bigger sum up front, and you could argue that like the older folks, the retirement house may benefit from it because they get it now versus being dead and get it, but he does bring up points,
Yeah. Well, one thing to keep in mind, something I hadn't thought about, but the people at Sandpiper, it's not a hospice. Those people aren't all about to die.
Exactly.
They're doing mall walks. You know what I mean? They're staying healthy.
Yeah,
they're
you're
being
right.
social. They're like you might be able to argue that when you're 60 something, the money isn't, when you're 62, the money's not as valuable as when you're 65. Sure. But it's not like they're all about to die in 6 months before they get the money at all. That's not really the scenario. So and Howard also gave them every opportunity. He was as honest as he could be. He's like, look, full disclosure, this might take a year before we settle this. And also, maybe he shouldn't do this, but on some level he has this bigger picture in mind too. His idea is that this case is going to set a precedent. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to make things better, not just for you guys in a Sandpiper case, but for anyone in any situation like this. If someone who's running one of these facilities treats their residents poorly, they're going to pay severely. Our
Yep.
case is going to make that precedent.
An
And
example.
everyone
Yeah.
is going to be better off. Facilities like Sandpiper might not even try it because they know how bad the penalties will be.
Mm-hmm.
That was like part of what Howard was doing, And maybe he shouldn't be using his people in this case to do that. But he explained it to him that he was doing that.
Yeah, he wasn't like
They
being
said they're okay
shady
with
or
it. Yeah.
hiding stuff. He was right up front with them.
And also, I can understand maybe since they're kind of naive and
Mhm.
he's an expert, that he can kind of get away with saying whatever he wants and they'll just go along with it.
Yeah.
But I don't think Howard, like that might be a true statement, but I don't think Howard was trying to take advantage of that. I think he's just doing the normal, regular thing any lawyer would do in a scenario.
Mhm.
I think that in general, everyone will be better off for this in the end.
Mhm.
I think that all the other lawyers involved were on board with this too. It wasn't just him.
Also, like he went out of the way to talk to them personally. Like he's big enough that he can just get a lawyer to do it, like somebody else.
Yeah,
but
he could have had some
it
underling.
exactly.
He didn't have to set up the meeting or go himself. Yeah, and he, if at any point Irene had said, "Actually, Mr. Hamlin, I don't know if I want to do it this way," he would have been like, "You listen to me. We're doing it my." He would have been like, "Oh,
let's
okay,
talk about this.
Let's change strategies."
Yeah.
He would have been totally happy to do whatever they wanted.
But Saul had to have it his way, and that's why he was partially upset. He's like, "Really? Like, what gives you the right to pretty much be, I don't say God, but like God in this situation? Like, and it is frustrating. Like you can see, I can see the side of Howard, and on top of that, he's going through stuff. Like we know he's already going through, the psychiatrist for issues, whether it's with his marriage, because we see his marriage is not that great, and they're pretty much picking on, like they're being bullies to him,
Like one of their arguments or justifications were that Howard will still be okay after this.
Exactly.
Like he's still a successful lawyer. He's got this firm. He's got him. Guess what? Kim and Jimmy would be okay too. They don't need to run this scam. They'll be okay also. They're both lawyers. They're going to get the settlement eventually. They don't need to do this either.
And I like how he even argued, Howard was like, well, yeah, I will be all right in the long run, which is like super tragic. what happens right after that. But, but like, that's not even the point he was saying. I felt like, he was like, basically just don't like, I forgot what the word he used, that I felt like he was like basically saying that, you shouldn't be.
He said they were doing it for fun.
Yes, that's it. I was like trying to remember what
doing it because they thought something about the legality of the case. They're just doing it to have fun. They're messing with his life and the lives of other people to entertain themselves. And it was kind of true. You saw that, Jimmy and Kim got to overhear. They like got the phone number, right?
Yeah.
They remember the details will cover in another episode. But anyway, they got to listen in on how the meeting went. And you saw them like having sex in the background as Howard's life is falling apart. They're
so sad,
And it even goes back to the scene I was talking about earlier when Jimmy came back from stealing Howard's car. He's like, "Yeah, let me tell you this funny story." Like it's this fun game to them. They're getting their thrills off it. They're bonding over it. And Howard even says, "Jimmy, look, I know you're shady. You had a rough childhood. You've been in trouble with law before. Like, I on some level, I can see you doing this.
Yeah.
But Kim, you're one of the best lawyers I've ever known. You don't have a bad history. What's wrong with you?" He was so disappointed in her.
Exactly.
Even more so than Jimmy. Kind of like you're saying, Howard has these other troubles in his life. I think that's another clue when you think about it. To let you know that this moment with him and Lala was going to happen. Just for a second, when you take a step back from like the plot moments that we're witnessing, think for a second about what happens when people go home. What happens after the scene we watch? After this crazy freaking day Howard just had, where he was poisoned, where he was made a fool of,
where
he's even figured out what's happened, and he's right.
I loved how he was
Can't
figuring it
really
out, by
do
the way. I thought
anything
that was
about it.
awesome. But
About what?
how he was figuring it out. Like, he
Yeah.
wasn't like oblivious to it. He's smart. And
Yes.
he
Yeah.
knows Jimmy. So for him to piece it together was just awesome. Like, I love that writing of it, you know.
And I also love that the moment when he when again, he's on these drugs that they slept him, and so he's kind of like worked up. And also, he's obviously frustrated and antsy about this whole situation with Jimmy in the first place.
Yeah.
But he's like trying to figure out how to handle this. And Cliff's like, look, I'm not thinking about you. I'm not thinking about Jimmy. I'm thinking about our clients.
Yes.
And when he said that, Howard was immediately like, right, my bad, never mind. He realized that he was getting too caught up in it. He knows the right thing. His natural personality is to do the right thing. Anyway, this is, what I'm trying to build up to is that Howard, after all this happens, what does he do? Does he go home and call up his best friend and tell him about this crap? Oh, Chuck's dead. Kind of because of Jimmy. Well, maybe he goes home and talks to his wife. Oh, he and his wife aren't really getting along.
But were they not getting along because of the issues possibly with Chuck? Like, Chuck, I meant passing. Like, that if he...
Maybe Chuck, maybe because of Jimmy. I get the... They didn't say specifically.
Yeah.
I get the idea. Probably their marriage wasn't great in the first place.
It could have been. That happens sometimes, unfortunately, if you have so much... Well, you're a successful person, you know, that could tie, you know, or be an issue, you know.
People in general sometimes that if you get married too young, or you fall in love but the person isn't who you thought they were, or some change happens in your life, or depression, or some new job, or someone has to move, or kids can change things. There's all these factors, you know, that might make someone's bond or marriage or whatever fall apart. And we could speculate on them, but whatever they were, whenever they started, my guess is that Howard having his car destroyed by bowling balls and trying to explain to his wife why sex workers are showing up at his lunch, that probably doesn't help.
Yeah,
right?
I forgot about that.
That's probably not the reason, but when those things happen, it probably doesn't make Howard's wife be like, "Oh, honey, I love you after all." She's probably like, "What are you getting mixed up in? I don't want anything to do with this." You know what I mean?
This could go to Saul.
Right. Now, maybe I'm stretching there to try to put some of that blame on Saul, but my point is that it makes sense for Howard to show up there, because what else is he going to do? He like, this is like this might be one of the biggest things that's happened in his whole life. Right? Certainly in recent history, this is the weirdest, craziest, toughest thing that's happened to him, and he doesn't have anyone to talk about it to. If he did, he might not have gone over to Jimmy and Kim's place.
That is true.
So keep that in mind.
And
but again, I'm trying to point out why I think that it was predictable or inevitable for Lalo to end up killing Howard. One, you can see that it makes sense that Howard's going to end up there.
Yeah.
With Lalo,
he was there already.
Well, I think we could have predicted he was going to end up going there.
Okay.
At least maybe at some point. At some point, they're giving us the clues. That's what I'm trying to say. They're giving us the clues. Remember, keep in mind that Nacho was the one that brought Jimmy to Lalo in the first place.
Okay.
Nacho turned out to be working for Gus.
Right.
So that gives Lalo some reason to want to question Jimmy. If Nacho brought Jimmy to Lalo and Nacho was working for Gus, Lalo's going to be like, wait a minute. Was this Jimmy guy working for Gus? Does he know someone? What did he have to do with Nacho? Why did Nacho bring me Jimmy?
Right.
Wait a minute. That scummy lawyer lied to me about what happened in the desert. I know his car was out there with bullet holes. He's not telling me something. Maybe he is working for Gus. You could see Lalo starting to make these connections. Lalo's trying to track down this lab. He's trying to get proof. He went through all the Germans, but when he was in that sewer and he saw that cockroach run across the screen, that's when it clicked in his mind.
Oh,
that cockroach lawyer. He even called him a cockroach at one point, and it was like a backhanded compliment. He was talking about he's a survivor, but also he's calling him a cockroach. But that moment was when, remember, right after that, he packs all his stuff and takes off.
Yeah, he does.
It's because he realized Jimmy's the key. That's the person I need to go talk to.
Yeah.
So We know Lalo's heading to Jimmy's. We know Howard's heading to Jimmy's. They never tell us that, but I feel like it's something we could have pieced together.
Yes.
I think if after every scene of the episode, just like I was analyzing all the prior episodes up to this one and kind of figured out what was happening in this episode, I think within this episode, if I had analyzed every scene along the way, if every scene I like paused it and thought about it, and it took an hour per scene, I think before we got to that final scene, I would have realized Lalo and Howard are both going to show up and Howard's going to get killed. We were already thinking about how there might be some mix up with Mike's guys following Jimmy and Howard's PI following Jimmy. There was already a little bit of foreshadowing of like the streams crossing there. My main point here is that it was set up. I don't think it was this random surprise ending. I think that it makes perfect sense they happened. It was all set up. The characters and the course of actions that were in motion led to that without it being some surprise trick the writers did. It was something that they have been setting up for a long time that we could have seen coming if we just were watching and analyzing carefully enough. And that's why I try so hard to watch and analyze everything so carefully.
But even when the scene happened, when Lalo shot Howard, I still was like devastated for like 2 days. I thought about it. I was like, because it was also like another, I guess, plus to the show is they're like truthful, I guess, in what they show. Like, it was very visual. Like you're just like you knew it was happening. It happened. But like, when he shot him, but I still like my brain was like, that just happened. Like I knew it was going to happen, but like. And he hits his head on like the table on top of that. Like it was just brutal almost.
Which, by the way, that was a callback to when Chuck hit his head in the Kinko's or whatever. Remember when Chuck just knew that Jimmy had doctored those documents.
Yeah.
And he went to the Photoshop, the office supply place or whatever, to ask the clerk. We had a picture. Jim was this guy here on Wednesday morning at 7:00 or whatever? And Jimmy knew that Chuck might go do that, and so he went and bribed. I think Lance was the guy's name. He's like, I'm gonna give you $100 to say you never saw me. And the guy's like, what? And he's like, come on, it's $100. And the guy's like, $200. But anyway, Chuck is like flipping out when this guy, won't tell him the truth. Chuck kind of knows it already. But he's gone into this office supply place and all the electricity. He starts freaking out and he passes out and hits his head.
Yeah, I remember that.
Boom, it's just, the same way that Howard hit his head coming down.
And it was like
there was another
interesting how like Lalo like obviously it wasn't like a gun was in his head and it shot immediately. Like Lalo was pulling out a gun, he was putting on a silencer, and you're like, oh my god, what?
It's very slow and deliberate and careful, he was still kind of sizing things up. But he was pretty sure no one else had a gun,
Oh yeah. And it was like tragic, because like Kim was like, get out of here, Howard. She was like telling him, by the way, there's no way he would have been able to leave, but at the same time, like she didn't want him to die. She wanted to screw with Howard. Saul wanted to screw with Howard. He didn't want him dead.
No, they did not want to hurt him. They did not want to seriously injure him or endanger his life. I think that if Howard had immediately left, maybe Lalo just would have let it go. But once there had been a little confrontation,
it was taking too long.
It was clear that Jimmy and Kim were scared. And he pulls out the gun. After that, no, he just can't let him go at that point. And it makes sense that Howard wouldn't go right away. Why would he just immediately leave? He had already demonstrated he wasn't leaving. They'd already told him like 3 times you need to go. And he like pulls out glasses and pours wine. He's not just going to suddenly leave. He's there to say his piece. Maybe even, by the way, recording the conversation. Possibly had some kind of device in his pocket recording, hoping to get Jimmy and Kim to say something. We know that Chuck did that before one time.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know if that's true. And even if it is true, I'm not sure if or how it will matter, but something to think about.
No. It's also just like interesting seeing Howard and Lalo just talk to each other, like the disconnection from like how he didn't, I think, realize how well, obviously he didn't know how dangerous this guy was, but like kind of like brushing him off because he's like, no, I need to talk to you guys. You know, like you said, it was just tragic. I was like, gee.
I think maybe in the very last moment, Howard might have started to realize he saw the gun and he saw the fear that Jimmy and Kim had, and I think he might have been in the middle of the sentence. This isn't necessary, you know. Like,
yeah.
A couple other callbacks, by the way, both in this episode and the last one, I think. That painting on the wall when the bullet hits and blood sprays onto a painting on that wall.
Yeah.
That painting was on the wall in the mansion from the opening scene with the ties when they're cleaning out Jimmy's mansion. That painting was there. Also, the little black book.
Was it like clean? It didn't have blood, I assume, on it.
Yeah, it was cleaned off. Yeah. Also, by the way, that's the same painting that on the backside has their sticky notes.
I was wondering that. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Also, at the vets with that little black book.
Sorry, I just thought of Doomsday was written on the back of that painting, and Doomsday was the end of his. Anyways,
that little black book at the vet's office. Do you remember that? It was like in code.
Yes.
You remember?
Yeah.
That was also in the house at the first scene when they were cleaning everything out. They like picked up that book and looked at it and threw it in the box.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I feel like every episode is a couple more things.
Yep. So that will end at least this. Oh yes.
I don't mind ending it. We've gone for a long time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make some speculation. What might
of course. My bad. Yeah.
So I'm not real sure because I haven't had enough time to think all this out.
I haven't either.
And also because what we had this past episode was sort of the resolution of what had been building up for several episodes.
Yep.
And I think that we might need some more episodes to build up more
for the next
clues to go on. But we do have some things to go on. So for one, here's a thought process. What is Lalo gonna get out of talking to Jim?
I was wondering that. Yeah, I'm assuming he's trying to get proof that Gus is behind this, and he knows. He thinks that Saul may know, or at least may have an idea.
Get him in the right direction.
Get
some information from him. Something someone pointed out an image that those German guys that Lalo was trying to use to track down, they didn't know where that lab was.
No.
But he was still able to piece it together from a bunch of different clues. Things that those lab guys know that they don't even realize matter are still clues. When Mike drove them all out to the desert, you remember, like, he gives them like a package with money and plane tickets and a car, and they all go to different airports, but they all drove out on a truck, and they get out of the truck and are in a desert. That truck is from the laundromat. The lab is underneath. So that's the type of thing that Lalo can find from interrogating those guys. Even if they don't know where the lab is, he can still find out that they were in that laundromat truck and track. And sure enough, we saw when he was in those sewers, he was looking at the laundromat where the lab is. He already knows where it is. But he can still figure things out, like how many people work there, or what kind of schedule did the trucks come in and out have? How do I get down there? How many? Even the thing when he like says I'm gonna attack him tonight, and they all like mobilize. He gets to see how many people leave that place and who the people are. He sees Mike. He sees Tyrus. He like Lalo gets all kinds of information, right?
Oh yeah.
So even if Saul doesn't exactly know who Gus is, Saul knows a lot of stuff. He knows who Mike is. And I think Saul will be able to set up a meeting between Lalo and Gus, especially if Lalo is threatening Kim's life.
Yep.
In the long run, it's possible that Lalo is still somehow threatening Kim's life and using Jimmy, or maybe even there's a switch around, just like it started off with Hector was going to use Nacho's dad. So Nacho kind of had to do certain things. And then Gus was going to, was using Nacho's dad to threaten him. And maybe it's going to start off with Lalo is threatening Kim and it makes Jimmy do certain things, but maybe eventually Gus is threatening Kim and it makes Jimmy do certain things. I don't know, but I think that there's a strong chance in the short run that Jimmy is going to set up some kind of meeting between Gus and Lalo in the lab. It's probably going to be arranged so that they're unarmed, but Gus will be fine with that because he already has a gun hidden down there.
Yep.
That's kind of what I expect coming from that. There's still some other things to figure out, though, like Howard's dead body's laying in a living room.
I was thinking
that.
Cars
parked out in front. They got to deal with this somehow. Like, maybe they made it look like a suicide. that seems like believable.
Plausible.
You
Yeah.
know, like Howard already has troubles with his wife. He embarrassed himself at work. Like, it would be believable to the people around that might happen.
Even though I wonder
However,
if Cliff would accept it. There's a
yeah,
chance because he kind of like just straight up said that Saul was behind it, and even though Cliff was like, "Let's deal with the clients," he may believe him, at least to a degree.
I think Cliff, generally speaking, believes Howard.
Yeah.
However, Cliff even said, like, it doesn't matter if you're right. It doesn't matter if I believe you. That whole scene in there, it's a done deal. We can't save the settlement anymore. We just need to go with what they're offering us.
But would he
after
believe
the fact with Howard dead, Cliff might still be suspicious
That's what I was wondering.
of what he did. I still think that Howard. I still think that Cliff would not be suspicious of Kim. I still think that she would trust Kim.
I think
and
so.
I still think that even if he believes that Jimmy did something, I don't think that means he thinks that Jimmy killed Howard, much less that Lalo killed Howard.
But
it's still like a big conclusion for Cliff to jump to.
But like, if Saul is being, I don't want to say shady, but like not telling certain truths because you can't talk about Lalo. Like somehow if they got into they talk to each other.
Investigation.
Well, yeah, like how would that go?
Things,
you know, Cliff may be like, he's not telling me the whole truth. Possibly, I have no clue. You know, I don't know the relationship between Cliff and Saul. Really, maybe they don't even have.
Cliff, as any lawyer, will tell you, it doesn't matter what he believes. It matters what he can prove in court.
That is true. That is true.
And right now, almost none of this is provable in court. It's just stuff that Howard just figured it out. And there's like almost no evidence. Like the pictures of the guy with the cast, gone. The phone number to the PI doesn't work. It's all a bunch of... Cliff wouldn't even know that phone number anyway. Like, how in the world do they possibly track or prove any of this, even if Cliff believes it? Here's the other thing, though. Here's the other person you should really be more worried about. It made a big point in that scene with Howard and his wife with the coffee and all that.
Yeah.
Howard says, just so you know, hun, that thing with Jimmy, and she's like, the guy and the bowling balls, and he's like, yeah, that's still going on? He's like, yeah, in fact, I think it's getting worse. Just want you to be aware. Might see something funny going on with Jimmy. I don't even know, but just be on the lookout. I just wanted to tell you up front.
Yeah.
So now Howard shows up dead at Jimmy's place after Howard gave his wife that warning.
Yeah, I did wonder about the wife.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm like, is she going to be relevant or is she not going to be? Is she going to be like good riddance? She won't be, by the way. But like, I would be shocked if she was like. But you're right. It is.
I think, in fact, there's a chance that might be why Jimmy has to do what Gus or Lalo or whoever says, maybe Kim also. They might be threatening Howard's wife. She might have come forward and tried to testify or ask questions.
Interesting.
And they have to put up this front. Maybe Kim can't lie that well or can't put up with the guilt of it, or the wife pushing might get Lalo or Gus threatening her, or you need to tell her this thing so that she tells the cops. I don't know. I could see a lot of ways it play out, but I just think that they introduced that wife. They made a big point of Howard telling her in that scene. It had to be for a reason. So
right. And we still have what, 5-6 more episodes, so there's still a lot of episodes.
6.
You know, I mean, it's not a lot, but it is a lot. Like, you know, like the next scene could be the end. It's not the end, but like how they, you know, like with Lalo, and I know it's a big threat issue right now, you know, how they left it off. Yeah. But they have 6 more episodes, so.
Yep.
But yeah, no, like those predictions.
Our gears are still churning. I know there's still other little clues and pieces that I'm trying to make sense of, and I probably need to rewatch some Breaking Bad episodes to get a better vision of how things line up and stuff. But I will be impressed with myself if I come up with as good a prediction as I did for last episode.
Yeah, I
give
really
me a couple more episodes worth of data, and I think I might start to piece more.
Yeah, I really don't know how this is going to wrap up. Honestly, it's really hard for me to, because you know, like why Saul is gone, like has left Albuquerque, you know, like does that have to do with the Salamancas? Well, which we know they're in Breaking Bad. They're not
Albuquerque.
Huh?
We know why he left Albuquerque for sure.
Oh, did they actually say that he was running from somebody?
From everybody.
Oh, okay. Well, is everyone like the police? Is everyone?
Everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are multiple people that are upset with him and or Walt. The cops, gangsters, etc.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of remember that. It's been a while since I saw Breaking Bad and exactly that. The reasoning. Hey, director, how's it going? We're actually just about to end the stream.
Like there wasn't like a scene where someone says, "These are the people that are after Jimmy," but Huel disappears. And Jimmy's like, Huel in Breaking Bad, Huel is Jimmy's bodyguard.
Yeah.
And he disappears. And Jimmy's like, okay. And he goes to Howard. They're like trying
Better
to figure
Call Saul.
things out. Like, not Howard. He goes to Walt. Anyway, he knows that everything is falling apart and there are people who would have it out for him. Remember, Mike had a bunch of people, or not Mike. Walt had a bunch of people killed. Mike had, can't say it straight. Walt had Mike's men in jail killed.
Yes.
And Jimmy has a hand in that, and so anyway, you could see there's like
a
lot of people a lot of crimes and murders were killed that Jimmy had a hand in.
It is a great show.
Just information he has about it, or a part he had to play, or whatever he did, someone might blame him and want to kill him for it, etc.
Someone's in chat. He's like, I want to watch the show. He's only seen a few episodes. We're basically talking about massive spoilers in the final season. We're referring a little bit to Breaking Bad right now. But I wanted to warn you, even though we're about to end it, that we're talking about spoilers. Yeah. And I don't want you to.
I think we are literally about to end it, so it doesn't even matter if you stay or not. I mean, if you had something else you want to say, go ahead. But no, I will say, anyone who's listening, watch the show. It's so good.
His name is
There's a reason we're talking about it here.
Awesome. Well, but yeah, it was fun. We're going to be covering episode 5 and 6 next week, and hopefully catch up and hammer out the final episode and probably more predictions the week after. Wikipedia. He doesn't mind getting spoilers. I mean, it's kind of like how you said, it's the journey.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I will say, if we've got someone new listening there who might start watching a show, rather than like give you a spoiler of like what happened in the most recent episodes, let me give you something to look out for when you start watching a show: the use of colors. Watch how consistently they'll use red to portray bad guys and blue to portray good guys. That's a little oversimplified, but once you're watching it and you start to pick up on that, there's other ways to use colors, and it's some nuances and variations to it, but it's a whole layer of storytelling that they use with the meaning of color throughout. So it'll give you extra appreciation when you start watching it, to take note for that.
Yes. Anyways, thank you everyone who's watching, and we will see you next week. You have a good night, director. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.